The fairy girl looked a little smug. In her heart, she mocked the other party for not knowing what was good for them. Once the tear of Asha was in hand, the rest could be left to the patriarch and elders. They didn't need to worry about such things. 6 fairy guards emerged from the dark alleyway. They surrounded Fang Hao and the others, a playful, hunting smile on their faces. Fang Hao coldly eyed the 6 fairies surrounding him. Fairy Guard, Tier 7. Fairy Sword Dancer, Tier 8. The attributes of the fairies were also displayed. There were a total of 4 fairy guards and 2 fairy sword dancers. The guards' weapons were silver polearms, similar to sharp spear tips at the top with crescent blades on the sides. They could be used for both thrusting and slashing. Fairy sword dancers were Tier 8 units. Their weapons were twin swords, and their brows carried a strong killing intent. It seemed the identity of the fairy girl earlier was quite special. Tier 7 and 8 were considered relatively high ranks in any faction's army. Fang Hao watched the group approach, but he didn't show the slightest panic or fear. It was just 6 people, and they were all units. How could they compare to his heroes? Instead, since these fairies had treated him like a pushover, he no longer needed to consider any rules of the Merchant Alliance. He took 2 steps back and said softly, "Kill them." A guard sneered, contemptuously saying, "Just based on you few." But before he could finish, Dimika swung his sword. The longsword cut through the opponent's halberd like tofu. Immediately after, a second sword light flashed out, and the fairy guard's head flew high into the air. The head rolled, and blood gushed from the neck like a fountain. The bloody scent spread out. Watching the fairy guard slowly fall, everyone's faces showed a solemn expression. Fairy guards were the elites of the fairy race, and a Tier 7 warrior was killed with a single blow. Who exactly were these guys? The fairy girl's face also turned ugly, but they had already made their move, and there was no turning back. She continued, "There are only 4 of them. Go together and kill them all. I'll take responsibility for any problems." The fairy guards and sword dancers, weapons in hand, charged towards Fang Hao again. Meanwhile, the fairy girl also began to flap her wings. A faint layer of pollen drifted down from her wings, carried by the wind from her flapping, and spread towards the group. This little flower fairy released flower fairy dust. If you inhale this pollen, someone like you will experience hallucinations, Laura now reminded, arms crossed. Fang Hao saw the spreading pollen, but what could he do? He couldn't stop breathing. He covered his mouth and nose with his sleeve and said to Njia, "Njia, you go deal with that flower fairy. Be careful of her strange abilities." "Okay." Njia kicked the guard in front of her flying, then pushed off the ground and charged towards the flower fairy girl. The flower fairy, it seemed, didn't have much close combat ability. Seeing Njia charging, she immediately flew into the sky. She increased the distance and continued to scatter pollen downwards. But as the distance increased, the effect of the pollen also weakened. Fang Hao, covering his mouth and nose, only coughed a little, but he hadn't experienced the hallucinations Laura Na mentioned. As for Dimika and Njia, neither of them showed any reaction or responded. It seemed the effect of the pollen varied depending on physical strength. This flower fairy clearly hadn't fully mastered her abilities. On the ground, Dimika unleashed sword lights one after another. Whether it was a guard or a sword dancer, none could withstand a second sword strike from him. In the blink of an eye, only 2 were left alive. Facing the approaching lizard man, the 2 fairies retreated step by step, maintaining what they considered a safe distance. But not every fairy had wings, so they couldn't escape even if they wanted to. At this moment, they realized how ridiculous it was for them to try and snatch the tear of Asha. The other side only needed to use 2 people to deal with them. "Kill them all, and we'll go back too," Fang Hao said from behind. Dimika charged out again, and with a swift strike, killed the remaining 2 in an instant. In the air, the flower fairy girl watched as all her kin died. Her face was pale with fear. Not daring to linger, she turned and was about to fly away. But how could Njia let her leave so easily? Trying to leave now? Too late. Njia picked up a roadside chain and swung it with force. The chain whipped out like an iron whip. Crack. A whip crack sounded. The iron whip struck the flower fairy's back, blood splattered, and she fell from the sky. And Jia quickly stepped forward, raising her fist to strike. Just then, "Stop!" A commanding shout echoed from behind. Following that, there was the sound of dense footsteps. Guards in standard armor and 4 tall iron golems charged over simultaneously. They surrounded the area. Even though there weren't many people on the street, the fight just now had attracted many onlookers. Especially since this area was not far from the tavern, the entrance of the tavern was already packed with people watching from a distance. "It's over. These people are in trouble." "What trouble? The fairies were all killed, weren't they?" "You don't know. The commander responsible for security at the station today is Sheeler of the fairy race. He's notoriously protective of his own. No wonder the fairies dared to cause trouble here. They must have known Sheeler was on duty." "Very likely. I don't think those people are easy to mess with either. They didn't show any mercy, killing everyone." The onlookers began to whisper, feeling fortunate they hadn't left early. They had witnessed this good show. The guards parted to make a path. A man with a luxurious appearance, in the form of a fairy, walked out and said sternly, "How dare you disregard the rules of the Merchant Alliance and engage in private combat here? You have a lot of guts." And Jia glanced at the man, then turned and swung her fist towards the fallen flower fairy. Sheeler was startled. One punch like that could kill someone instantly. He immediately drew the long sword from his waist, leaving a blur behind him, while his true body had already charged in front of Njia and thrust his sword. Clang! Njia's tiger claw collided with Sheeler's blade, producing a metallic clang. The flower fairy also took this opportunity to stumble and rush into the Merchant Alliance guards, hiding behind Sheeler. At this moment, the flower fairy was covered in blood, especially from the iron whip just now. A bloody gash was left on her back, and she looked miserable. Seeing the other party escape, Njia also silently walked back to Fang Hao's side. "He should be a hero. His strength is a bit greater than mine," Njia said softly, leaning close to Fang Hao. Fang Hao nodded. Shadow Crown Sword, Sheeler, Purple Tier 5 Hero. When Sheeler approached, he had already checked the other party's attributes. A purple hero was considered a high-tier hero in this area. Sheeler's expression was serious, and he also eyed the group in front of him with some apprehension. He could confirm that the orc girl and the lizard man were both heroes. The two humans didn't look like heroes, but it was hard to be sure. He had been a commander at the Merchant Alliance station for 5 years. He had met quite a few heroes from various factions, but the people in front of him were completely unfamiliar, and he couldn't even identify which faction they belonged to. However, he was the commander, and his kin couldn't die in vain. "Who are you? How dare you kill people in the Merchant Alliance station? You have a lot of guts. Aren't you afraid of the Merchant Alliance holding your faction accountable?" From beginning to end, Sheeler's focus was on Fang Hao, protecting the flower fairy. His partiality was very obvious. Fang Hao looked at him calmly and said, "If you ask the flower fairy behind you, you'll know we were acting in self-defense." The people around also discussed amongst themselves. In fact, the positions of Fang Hao and the bodies on the ground showed the difference. Fang Hao and his group were heading towards the teleportation array, while the dead fairies had surrounded them from all sides. Not far away, there were people who weren't afraid of causing more trouble. They hid in the crowd and shouted a few words, saying that he shouldn't protect his own kind. This made Sheeler, the city defense commander, look increasingly displeased. Their fairy race was already small in number, and so many had died this time. If he really let these people leave, he wouldn't have the face to return to his clan. But the matter had to be handled in a way that left no room for criticism. "Heh." Sheeler sneered. "Who is right and who is wrong? The Merchant Alliance will naturally investigate. Now, you few put down your weapons and come with me." "Ridiculous. If we go with you, we'll die even more miserably." Fang Hao's expression also turned cold. This place was not a good place. If he went with them, it would be like seeking death. Furthermore, the things he had bought with money were being robbed, and now he was being questioned head-on. A ball of anger was also suppressed in his heart. "If you don't go, you will not only die, but even the faction behind you will be implicated." Sheeler gripped the sword in his hand, his voice growing colder. I'll give you one last chance. Just you? Give me a chance. Fang Hao sneered. A cold glint flashed in Shieler's eyes. His figure turned into a phantom and instantly appeared in front of Fang Hao. The sword tip aimed directly at Fang Hao's forehead. But as soon as this sword was thrust out, Shieler suddenly felt a terrifying aura appear beside him. This aura made him feel cold and fearful, as if the abyss had opened its door and a demon was watching him with interest from within. Shieler quickly looked to the side and saw the pair of crimson eyes under the other human's hood. At this moment, he felt as if time had frozen. The hooded human extended a slender, pale finger and flicked his forehead. Bang! Shieler instantly felt a heavy blow. His body flew back like a cannonball. He flew dozens of meters before finally stopping. At this moment, Shieler no longer had his dashing appearance. His hair was disheveled, blood flowed from his forehead, staining his upper body. But it seemed he was otherwise unharmed. He stood up shakily, his steps unsteady. Laura Na was not only skilled in dark magic, but her weapon in combat was a red two-handed sword. That head flick almost killed Shieler. You are a dark gold level powerhouse. The Merchant Alliance has no intention of being your enemy. Please be magnanimous this time and let us go. Shieler's face was pale, and a chill ran down his spine. He was a purple hero, and even facing an orange hero, he wouldn't be defeated by a single finger. He was certain that the other party had reached the dark gold level, or even higher. Why would such a person appear here? And he just happened to run into them. If the other party wanted to, they could kill everyone present here. At that time, the Merchant Alliance would only arrange for someone to come and reconcile, and they wouldn't go to war with a dark gold hero because of them. Now, all he could do was try his best to calm this matter down. Laura Na remained silent, her gaze fixed on Fang Hao. Fang Hao said, "Why do you think an apology is useful? You weren't this attitude just now." From the moment Shieler made a move, the negotiation had turned into a battle. It was a test of strength. Now that his side had the advantage, he naturally wouldn't let them off easily. This matter, Shieler still wanted to explain. At this moment, a sharp voice came from the back of the crowd. "Gentlemen, I will report this matter to the Merchant Alliance headquarters and impose corresponding penalties on the fairy race and Shieler." A goblin wearing a purple robe with gold patterns walked out, followed by two goblins and several guards. Fang Hao recognized one of the goblins, the goblin clerk who liked to chat, Molu. Molu didn't speak, just stood obediently behind the leading goblin. "Are you in charge?" Fang Hao looked at this person. "I am the person in charge of Station 032, Cook Toter, and I can give you my assurance," the goblin said. "Your assurance is useless to me. It's more like you're protecting them," Fang Hao continued. The goblin was stunned and thought for a moment. He said sincerely, "As compensation for what just happened, the Merchant Alliance will waive the cost of the goods you purchased at the auction today, and you will be upgraded from a regular member of the Merchant Alliance to a gold member. Of course, this will not affect the investigation of Commander Shieler's abuse of power." With the matter escalating to this point, Station 032 had completely lost face. Not only did they surround a Merchant Alliance member, but they also lost the fight and had to pay compensation. Hearing the goblin's words, the anger in Fang Hao's heart dissipated considerably. This time, purchasing the organ jar and the tear of Asha added up to 15 million war coins. This was not a small sum. Even the total income of Lysis City might not reach this amount. These 15 million had also emptied Fang Hao's coffers, leaving him with only tens of thousands of war coins. Now that the other party was willing to waive the cost, and he got the items and his money back, it was naturally a good thing. After a moment of silence, Fang Hao agreed. "Okay, give me the money now, and within a week, I want to know how your headquarters will handle this." He still relied on the Merchant Alliance platform and planned to quit while he was ahead. "Okay, I can promise you." After the goblin finished speaking, he gave a few instructions to the goblin behind him. Before long, someone delivered a package. The package was opened, and inside were neatly stacked war cards. The total amount was 15,050,000. Fang Hao closed his backpack and carried it in his hand. Ultimately, this world was still about strength. This time, if Laura Na hadn't shown her dark gold level strength, the Merchant Alliance would have had all sorts of excuses. Even if you were in the right, it was useless without strength. Everything still depended on power. With the matter resolved, Fang Hao didn't plan to stay any longer. He glanced at the goblin and the others and led his group towards the teleportation array. The people from the Merchant Alliance watched Fang Hao and the others leave, sighing slightly. Sheeler walked over, covering his wound, and said apologetically, "Lord Cook Toter, I have caused trouble for the Merchant Alliance. Sheeler, I will report to headquarters truthfully. Don't blame me. I did this to save your life and that flower fairy's life," the ornate robed goblin said. "I know," Sheeler replied. The goblin continued, "Effective immediately, Sheeler is relieved of his command and will be imprisoned along with this flower fairy." The guards took action and imprisoned the two of them. It was already very late when they returned to the territory. Fang Hao was in a good mood after this auction. He didn't spend a penny and got an orange organ jar and the Tear of Asha for free. If he had known the Merchant Alliance would pay, he would have bought more at the auction, regardless of whether it was useful or not. "Prepare a room for me. I won't be going back today," Lorena said. "All right, I'll build you a separate mansion. You'll have more freedom there." Okay, this time, on the way to the auction, Fang Hao clearly felt the change in Lorena. Not only did she exchange a few words with Anya, when he asked some questions about goblin technology, she also gave detailed answers. Especially during the battle, she not only actively reminded him that the flower fairy had released pollen, but after defeating Shiriel, she also asked him how to handle it. If it were before, Lorena would never have done such a thing. Her previous behavior was more like unleashing the anger in her heart, but now she is clearly willing to communicate with others and consider their feelings. This surprised Fang Hao, and at the same time, he was thinking about how to maintain this. To make Lorena more willing to integrate into this group. Now that Lorena wanted her own place, Fang Hao wouldn't refuse. Originally, there was plenty of empty space in the city, so building a residence for Lorena was not a problem. "How about building it here?" Fang Hao said, pointing to the empty space in front of him. This area was to the left of the Lord's mansion, separated by a main road, but it was still considered a core area of the city. "Okay," Lorena said flatly. Fang Hao directly opened the Lord's book and found the civilian house building blueprint. He chose to build it on the empty space in front of him. Light rose, and a wooden house was built. After upgrading the civilian house to level 9, it had already become a 3-story stone building with separate courtyards in the front and back. There are finished chandeliers and furniture in the warehouse. You can choose some, and if you like anything, let the skeleton soldiers move it over," Fang Hao said softly. "Okay," Lorena nodded without being polite and directly led a few passing skeleton warriors towards the warehouse. The warehouse stored the furniture and spoils of war that Fang Hao had collected. Among them, the furniture obtained from the blood race was quite numerous and beautifully shaped. However, the patterns carved on the furniture involved the common biological shapes used by the blood race. Skulls and bat wings were relatively common. The maids in the city wouldn't choose this kind of furniture, so most of it was stored in the warehouse gathering dust. It was perfect for Lorena to use. Lorena left with the skeletons. Fang Hao went directly to the organ museum. It was already late at night. The luminous stone street lamps on the street emitted a faint light, illuminating the road. The organ museum was a special building. The prerequisite for upgrading was that the Lord's mansion reached the stone castle level. And level 10 was the stone castle, which was still one level away. Stepping into the organ museum, you could immediately feel a chilling cold. The museum was relatively bright, but it was empty. The stone door on the second floor was still closed, and Nelson was inside making demon dolls. Fang Hao took out the slaughter proficiency organ jar from his storage space and came to the front of a few miniature buildings. Currently, the revival organ jar was placed in the burial ground location. The flashing speed organ jar was placed in the shooting range location. Before the next upgrade of the organ museum, only one organ jar could be placed in each building. This put Fang Hao in a dilemma again. The remaining buildings were burial ground, undead corridor, necromancer tower, and megalithic tomb. The burial ground was a building for recruiting labor skeletons, which was not suitable for the slaughter proficiency attribute and could be directly excluded. What remained were the cavalry, mage, and two-handed sword, three of which were suitable. So far, there have been few opportunities to use cavalry in all battles. Not only because the cavalry's level was not high, but there were also no heroes in the territory who were good at commanding cavalry. And the subsequent large-scale battles, including the Cold Wind Mountains and the Bloody Mountains. The terrain was even less suitable for the performance of cavalry, and in Fang Hao's hands, the mobility and combat power of cavalry had not been fully utilized. Therefore, slaughter proficiency was first excluded from the cavalry building. As for the necromancer, the magic's destructive power was indeed great, but the release of skills required chanting time. Within 3 seconds, the attack power could not be stacked, and the effect of slaughter proficiency could not be exerted. Finally, only the megalithic tomb remained, with the tomb guards using two-handed swords. After thinking it through, he went directly to the miniature building megalithic tomb. He placed the organ jar in his hand in the circular groove. Click! With a soft sound, the organ jar in the groove slowly sank, leaving only the skull jar lid exposed. Immediately after, a faint light instantly spread out, and all the tomb guards had their attributes changed. Tomb Guard, Tier 4. Buff Skill, Slaughter Proficiency. Slaughter Proficiency. Every time an enemy is killed, attack power plus 100% and attack speed plus 75% for 3 seconds. Description: whether alive or awakened, they are powerful warriors. They hold huge weapons and tirelessly hack at their targets. Even the strongest enemies cannot escape death. The organ jar can be said to be a great invention of the undead race. Through this method, the attributes of the troops are enhanced, allowing troops who are already tireless and fearless to have varied and strange abilities. Of course, collecting organ jars is not easy, as they contain the organs of powerful creatures. Leaving the organ museum, Fang Hao came to the Merchant Alliance building again. Inside the building, the skeleton merchants, who had finished their day's work, were chatting and playing cards in the hall. If skeletons could drink and eat, then this place would undoubtedly become a tavern. Seeing Fang Hao push the door and walk in, the group of skeleton merchants all stood up and bowed. Okay, everyone, keep playing. I have something to discuss with Duojin. Fang Hao smiled and motioned for everyone to continue. The skeletons sat down and continued what they were doing, and Fang Hao came to the front desk. Lord, it seems this auction was quite fruitful. Duojin said. Oh, how can you tell it was good? Fang Hao asked curiously. I just received news from the Merchant Alliance that we have changed from ordinary members to gold members, my lord. Duojin continued. No wonder. Duojin didn't know what he had bought, so how could he know the harvest was good? It turned out he was referring to the increase in membership level. It seems that Lorana's identity as a dark gold hero is quite useful. Even if she can't be commanded, keeping her as a mascot is quite good, as she can deter many people. Is there any difference between gold members and ordinary members? Fang Hao asked. My lord, the tax rate for gold members in the Merchant Alliance is 1%, and the purchase orders are 4. Also, there are some privileges for participating in events organized by the Merchant Alliance. Duojin explained. Ordinary members are taxed at 2%. The amount of items Fang Hao sold here was very large, and 500,000 would deduct 10,000 Warfire coins. It could be said that Fang Hao felt both heartache and had to trade on the Merchant Alliance platform. Now that it has become 1%, the tax deduction is even less. Moreover, the number of purchase orders has also increased from 2 to 4, and you can directly purchase what you need through the orders. Above gold members, are there any other levels? There are also diamond members and supervisors. Diamond members are the top members of the Merchant Alliance, with a tax rate of 0.5%. Supervisors have gone beyond the concept of members and have voting and election rights in internal affairs of the Merchant Alliance. Duojin explained carefully. In this way, the members on the 3rd and 4th floors of the auction house are likely the gold and diamond members introduced by Duojin. In addition to the reduction in tax rates, they will also receive some privileges to show the uniqueness of high-level members. And supervisors are more like modern shareholders. Forces powerful enough to influence the Merchant Alliance will be courted and become supervisors, within the Merchant Alliance, possessing certain rights. Although Duojin didn't say it, these supervisors are probably able to share a portion of the Merchant Alliance's profits. Through this membership level system, it can also be seen that the internal rules of the Merchant Alliance are very thoughtful and complete. From now on, the transactions we make, the Merchant Alliance will only deduct 1%, right? Yes, my lord. Okay. Fang Hao replied and continued. By the way, Duojin, I need a few materials here. See if the store sells them. If not, just fill out an order. I need them urgently. Oh, okay, my lord. Please tell me, and I'll see if we have them. Coral crystal, tear of the ocean, breeze white coral, morning blue coral. I need 50 units of each. Fang Hao said, checking the lord's book. These were the 4 materials missing from the wishing well. Various corals and tears of the ocean. These names sound like materials from the ocean or coastal areas. It would be difficult for him to obtain them here. In this auction, even the most precious osseous tear had been obtained, so the construction progress should be sped up. It would be better to build it as soon as possible to test the effect of the wishing well early. An orange building and so many rare materials. It should be very powerful. Click. Duojin opened the store shelves behind him and searched for the materials Fang Hao needed among the dazzling array of goods. After confirming it again, Duojin said, My lord, we have coral crystal for sale. The price per unit is 120 warfire coins. That expensive? I'll buy it. Fill out purchase orders for the rest. Since someone is selling coral crystal, the other few items should also be for sale. Fang Hao nodded and said, Okay, my lord. Duojin directly purchased 50 units of coral crystal, and then took out the purchase order and filled in the names of the remaining 3 materials. After filling out the order, he turned and put it into the mailbox behind him. Fang Hao didn't stay long either. After leaving the Merchant Alliance building, he returned to the Lord's mansion to rest. Although he only participated in an auction today, it also made him feel tired. The next day, early morning, Fang Hao woke up from his sleep early, stood by the window, and stretched his somewhat stiff waist. He didn't sleep too well yesterday. Lorana was moving furniture with the skeletons, making a lot of noise. He didn't know why finished furniture sounded like a renovation. He didn't dare to say, and he didn't dare to ask. Fortunately, by midnight, Lorana's side also quieted down, and Fang Hao slowly fell asleep. At breakfast, Anya ate while saying, Lorana, I see you're quite powerful. Do you want to spar later? Uffed. Fang Hao almost spat it out. He looked at Anya in surprise, thinking to himself, don't give away kills. He still remembered how crazy Lorana was. She had crushed a huge iron coffin into metal scraps. No need, I'm not good at close combat. You can find D, that lizard man, to practice with. Lorana said casually while drinking fruit wine. Fang Hao frowned, looking at the situation in front of him. Lorana not only refused, but also used a more tactful way. Although she didn't remember Dimika's name, she also showed her attitude. Yesterday, you repelled that fairy with just one finger. How did you do that? Anya continued to ask. Compression of energy. It wasn't the power of my finger that pushed the other party away, but the power of dark magic. This is not suitable for you. Lorana explained softly. Can I learn dark magic? There is a way, but I feel Fang Hao won't allow it. The two chatted calmly. It gave people a sense of unreal peace. After breakfast, Anya was lured away by Luali to visit the newly established village of the black-footed cats. At breakfast, Luali had already arrived, but seeing Lorana was also there, she waited outside and didn't dare to come in. Those who had witnessed Lorana's madness were more or less wary in their hearts. Fang Hao was the same. Anya left, and Lorana also went to the tailor shop, saying she wanted to order 2 pieces of clothing. Everyone was busy with their own affairs, and Fang Hao continued to study his magic book. Approaching noon, the skeleton merchant Duojin slowly walked into the Lord's mansion, and after greeting Eir and the others, he said to Fang Hao, My lord, this is the blueprint for the marble floor you wanted. After speaking, he held the blueprint in both hands and presented it to Fang Hao. Great, you've worked hard, Duojin. Fang Hao's heart was filled with joy. With the blueprint, The Lord's mansion could also be upgraded to level 10. It's what I should do, my lord. Fang Hao took the blueprint, and after Duojin bowed again, he withdrew from the hall. Using the Lord's book to record it, the materials needed for the blueprint were also displayed. Marble floor, marble 2. Description: floor made of polished marble. That's simple. It only required 2 units of marble. And marble was a type of raw material from stone mining. It was difficult to mine marble in ordinary quarries, but it was relatively common in the Cold Wind Mountains and the Bloody Mountains. Marble. Category: stone. Description: rock with beautiful patterns. Confirming that the materials were sufficient, Fang Hao directly walked out of the Lord's mansion. On the empty space on one side, he began to make marble floor. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained 808 marble floors. 808 pieces of marble floor appeared in front of Fang Hao. The surface of the marble floor was smooth, with the unique patterns of marble. It did look better than the previous stone floor, but it was still incomparable to the stone used in the auction hall yesterday. The upgrade materials were sufficient. Fang Hao called out all the maids who were cleaning inside the Lord's mansion. Next, it was time to upgrade the Lord's mansion. Level 10 Lord's Stone Castle. Tough wood 25,000, stone brick 16,000, fine stone brick 5,500, marble floor 800, iron 2,100, cast iron block 800, metal parts 900, terracotta tile 3,000. Confirm upgrade. A large area of light covered the Lord's mansion, and the original Lord's mansion began to be raised and expanded. Several new hexagonal towers were added. The shape had completely become a stone castle. It wasn't until half an hour later that the upgrade of the Lord's mansion was completed. Upgrade complete. Your territory has reached level 10 Lord's Stone Castle, meeting the condition for establishing a kingdom. Do you confirm to establish a kingdom? Source _chapter _underscore placeholder output. As the system prompt sounded, Fang Hao was slightly startled. After the Lord's mansion was upgraded to level 10, the territory was directly transformed into a kingdom. Your territory has reached level 10 Lord's Stone Castle, meeting the conditions for establishing a kingdom. Do you confirm the establishment of the kingdom? When the option appeared, he instinctively chose to confirm. Congratulations, Lord, for being the first Lord to establish a kingdom. Rewards issued. All faction influence plus 100, affiliated faction influence plus 200, faction building blueprint, orange, kingdom coin minting building blueprint, purple, kingdom flag production blueprint, blue, kingdom law scroll, kingdom sand table, shadow stone 200, war coin 1000. The prompt sounded again. Similar to when he first upgraded the City Lord's mansion, the first Lord to establish a kingdom received system rewards. The system's rewards had never disappointed Fang Hao. First, he checked the first faction building blueprint. Ancient Burial Pit, orange. Category: Special Building Blueprint. Recruitment: Nisbet. Construction prerequisite: Lord's Stone Castle. Construction requirements: hardy wood 1200, stone brick 3500, iron 1200, cast iron block 800, trace of death 5, shadow stone 8. Description: the ancient eternal undead guard the magnificent mausoleum. So-called death is merely proof of decay. Seeing the blueprint's description, Fang Hao's heart filled with joy. Because of the hundredfold increase ability, undead troop buildings were what he needed most. Especially powerful troop buildings. However, the name of the troop recruited by this building felt more like a person's name, rather than names with troop professions like skeleton warrior or undead mage. But, since the building was orange, it should be very powerful. When the troops were recruited, he could just check their attributes. He continued to check the second blueprint. Kingdom Mint. Category: Building. Building prerequisite: Kingdom, United City-State. Construction requirements: hardy wood 1100, stone brick 2500, hemp rope 850, iron 800, cast iron block 500, metal parts 1200, crimson flame essence 1. Description: economy is the most solid backing in the survival competition. The mint can produce a continuous supply of gold coins for you. Fang Hao understood the purpose of the mint. It was a place to make gold coins. In the warehouse, there were a large amount of gold and silver artifacts stored. These were all spoils of war and also included burial objects obtained from some ancient tombs. They were quite corroded and damaged and could no longer be used. They could be remelted into gold coins at that time. But the problem with the mint's production was also very obvious. The gold and silver artifacts collected would eventually run out. Without a gold or silver mine, it would be difficult to maintain continuous production afterwards. Fang Hao recalled that it seemed Lysis City had its own gold mine. He could look into that. Next was the production blueprint. Kingdom flag, hardywood 1, leather 1, linen 2, thread 5, silk 1, metal parts 3. Description: a customizable flag that will represent the identity of the kingdom. There wasn't much to say about the flag. He would make one later to see what it was for. There were still the Kingdom Law Scroll and Kingdom Sand Table left. These two were finished items, not blueprints. Kingdom Law Scroll. Category: Scroll. Effect: Kingdom Public Order plus 10%. Description: the regulation and revision of kingdom laws. It contains the laws and regulations that all residents and outsiders within the kingdom's borders must obey. The scroll was a meter-long silk scroll. The surface of the scroll was dark purple, and he could feel the exquisite and delicate patterns when he touched it. When unfolded, the inside of the scroll was blank, without any content or text. It seemed he needed to write the formulated legal clauses on it. In addition, the scroll was also a treasure, increasing public order by 10%. Kingdom Sand Table. It was a sand table 6 meters long and 5 meters wide. On the sand table, whether it was the Coldwind Mountains or the Bloody Mountains, or even the Bright Moon Highlands, they were all included. However, due to the large size of the territory, on the scaled-down sand table, it only visually displayed roads and terrain. Except for a few major cities, villages and towns were not shown on the sand table. Fang Hao finished looking at all the rewards and showed a satisfied smile. This time, the harvest was truly considerable. On the other side, Yu Tianpeng stood in front of his lord's mansion, silently watching the building shrouded in light. He remained silent on the surface, but his heart was also a little excited. Congratulations, boss. You are about to be the first to upgrade the Lord's mansion to level 10. With the system rewards issued, no one will dare to question your status as the #1 in the region, a fat man beside him said obsequiously. The fat man was Qiu Zhishang, the one who was boycotted by everyone in the channel because the price of terracotta tiles he was selling was too outrageous. Having been ostracized in the regional channel, he was somewhat disheartened. However, he didn't expect to then receive an invitation from Yu Tianpeng. One should know that the Tianpeng alliance had quite a bit of popularity during this time, even overshadowing Fang Hao. After some discussion, Qiu Zhishang joined the Tianpeng alliance and became a member of the alliance. In the future, when there was danger, he would receive protection from the alliance members. Of course, this protection was not free. Everyone had to be valuable to the alliance, and Qiu Zhishang's value was providing terracotta tiles. This was also one of the requirements for recruiting members into the Tianpeng alliance. All members' resources had to be uniformly allocated by the alliance leader. This also allowed Yu Tianpeng's own city to be rapidly upgraded. Today, after purchasing marble flooring at a high price, he began upgrading to level 10. According to the system's previous rules, the first lord to reach the stone castle level would receive system rewards, which might even allow him to soar. No rush, Yu Tianpeng nodded indifferently, still maintaining a mature and steady demeanor. Yu Tianpeng was slightly younger than Qiu Zhishang. He was 32 years old this year. Before crossing over, he was also a company boss, but his reputation in the industry wasn't very good. After arriving here, he obtained an alliance token in a mission. In one fell swoop, he established the Tianpeng alliance. Now, every day, people would go to great lengths to flatter Yu Tianpeng in order to join the Tianpeng alliance, willing to work like oxen and horses, and there were even some female lords with some looks who wanted to become his goddaughters. Within the alliance, there were 2 female lords who were popular celebrities before crossing over, with first-rate figures and faces. They would take turns visiting Yu Tianpeng via the teleportation array to keep him company, to show their value. Watching the Lord's mansion gradually turn into a castle, the smile on Yu Tianpeng's face became increasingly evident. As the light dissipated, Yu Tianpeng immediately received a system prompt. However, the smile on Yu Tianpeng's face gradually faded, turning into confusion and bewilderment. Qiu Zhishang saw the change in Yu Tianpeng's expression. He immediately asked, "Boss, how is it? Did you get the special reward for being first?" Qiu Zhishang provided a lot of assistance for Yu Tianpeng's upgrade to level 10 with his terracotta tiles. If the other party was happy, maybe he would arrange for that celebrity to accompany him for a night. But when he noticed Yu Tianpeng's expression becoming increasingly serious, he also realized that something might have gone wrong. "Boss, what's wrong?" Yu Tianpeng's face was grim. "The system prompt says I'm the second to reach level 10. How is this possible?" Qiu Zhishang's brows also furrowed instantly. His mind raced, but he immediately reacted. He exclaimed, "It's Fang Hao, it must be him. Besides me, only he can produce terracotta tiles. Damn it, boss, he stole your reward." A hint of anger also surfaced on Yu Tianpeng's face. For nearly a month now, he had been surrounded by flattery and celebrity companionship every day. He had long felt like a chosen one, with great power in his hands. Now, he also felt that the reward that was clearly his had been snatched away by Fang Hao. But on second thought, a question arose in Yu Tianpeng's mind. Even if he also has terracotta tiles, how could one person possibly reach level 10 before us? The Tianpeng Alliance gathered everyone's materials to upgrade himself to level 10. How could Fang Hao possibly upgrade before him? This was simply impossible. "Boss, it must be Fang Hao. Only he has terracotta tiles, and I heard that someone discovered Fang Hao's subsidiary city. He should also have his own team," Qiu Zhishang continued. Yu Tianpeng pondered for a moment. He snorted coldly and continued, "Contact this person and have them investigate the location of Fang Hao's territory for me." Upon hearing this, Qiu Zhishang's expression immediately brightened. He had always held a grudge against Fang Hao. If he could eliminate Fang Hao through the alliance, it would also be revenge for himself. "Okay, I'll contact them right away." After checking the rewards, Fang Hao immediately checked the Lord's Mansion attributes. Level 10 Lord's Stone Castle. Affiliated Lord, Fang Hao. Abilities, production/gathering plus 5%, troop movement plus 5%, all attributes plus 6%. Existing buildings, level 9 catacombs, level 9 stables. Appointed officials, Copper Bull City, Tylok, Coldwind City, Skullcrusher, Northwatch City, Blackthorn, Prul, Tavik, Blood Keep, Lorana and Tobias, Web Weaver Camp, Domina, unnamed, Zhongbin, unnamed, Fulei, unnamed, Dongjue, unnamed, Kong Yongd. Note: Territory Core Building. Materials required for upgrade: hardywood 30,000, stone brick 20,000, fine stone brick 7,500, marble flooring 1,200, iron 2,500, cast iron block 1,200, metal parts 1,200, terracotta tile 5,000. The quantity of materials increased significantly, but no special materials appeared. As long as the factory continued to produce materials, upgrading to level 11 was only a matter of time. At the same time, a new official system was added. Officials within the territory were mainly divided into governors and commanders. Governors were the individuals appointed by the Lord's Book at the beginning, responsible for the city's development, construction, and management. Commanders were the garrison leaders, who had the authority to mobilize the city's army. Previously, the people Fang Hao appointed in various cities were both governors and commanders, just like Copper Bull, Tylok, who was both the governor and the army commander. Now that they were separated, it was convenient for management, but he didn't have many people on hand. He needed to adjust it step by step, and there was no rush. Eir led the maids to tour the expanded stone castle. They planned what each room would be used for and what kind of furniture to add. There were still too few people living in the city lord's mansion. Fang Hao, Eir, Anya, a total of only 3 people. It was like a 6-story apartment building full of rooms, but only 3 rooms were occupied. The maids chattered in disgust. Fang Hao walked directly out of the Lord's mansion and headed towards the Undead building area. He was a little impatient to see what kind of powerful troops the blueprint he received this time would recruit. There was an open space behind the Great Stone Mausoleum, which was just enough to satisfy the space needed for construction. He opened the ancient burial pit blueprint and confirmed construction. Orange light rose, gradually forming the outline of a pyramid. The process lasted for an hour. When Fang Hao returned from the Lord's mansion again, a small pyramid had appeared in front of him. Calling it small was relative to the Egyptian pyramids before crossing over. The pyramid in front of him was also the size of 5 football fields. The surface was built with regular stone bricks, and various symbols and characters representing the undead were carved on the surface of the stone bricks. Facing Fang Hao's direction was a huge stone door carved with various patterns and characters. In front of the stone door were 2 stone lampstands, faintly emitting a quiet blue light. Inside, it won't be a pharaoh, will it? Fang Hao muttered. Didn't they say that inside a pyramid was the tomb of a pharaoh? Although the one in front of him was a bit small, it was at least a royal relative. He immediately checked the building attributes. Ancient burial pit. Category: special building. Recruitable: Nisbet. Nisbet. Crawling spine 10. Trace of death 7. Stars silver 5. Forgotten soul 1. Description: the ancient eternal undead guard the magnificent mausoleum. So-called death is merely proof of decay. The recruitment conditions were indeed quite strict. Besides the crawling spine, the other 3 materials were each more precious than the last. Especially the forgotten soul, there was only one in the territory. It was also a material dropped after killing the Fear Eater. If he hadn't had that opportunity, Fang Hao would probably not have been able to recruit it. Consume corresponding materials to recruit Nisbet? Things had come to this point. It would be unreasonable not to recruit. Recruit. Hundredfold increase triggered. Recruiting Nisbet 101. The stone door in front of him opened, and a tall figure walked out slowly. At the same time, under the trigger of the hundredfold increase, tall figures also appeared around him. These were troops with a height of over 4 meters. Their tall skeletons were covered with complex patterns. What was striking was that their skulls were shaped like null skulls. Their empty eye sockets glowed with a quiet blue light, carrying a strong sense of oppression. Fang Hao immediately checked the attributes. Nisbet, Tier 10. Faction: Undead. Racial traits: Undead, Hollow Skeleton, Light Weakness. Skills: Soul Devour, Trait Stripping, Death's Descent. Innate skills: Domain Power Mastery, Domain Battle Axe Mastery. Soul Devour, Passive. This unit kills enemies and devours their souls, increasing its own strength. Trait Stripping, Active. This unit strips the target's racial trait. The target's racial trait will be ineffective for at least 5 seconds. Death's Descent, Active. The body receives the blessing of death for 120 seconds, increasing all attributes by 100%. Description: the Lich Priests created the Nisbet in the likeness of the ancient deity. They guard the area around the monarch's tomb and are the creators of the immortal monarch's authority. Tier 10. It was indeed Tier 10. In this world, troop tiers were only counted up to Tier 10. And within Tier 10, they were also divided into upper, middle, and lower grades, with varying strengths. After reaching Tier 10, whether one could become a hero was the biggest test they faced. Many strong individuals remained at Tier 10, unable to pass the test and advance to become heroes. The Nisbet has a total of 3 skills, but each skill has its own corresponding characteristics. The first skill, Soul Devour, can continuously improve its abilities by killing enemies in battle. The skill Trait Stripping is more like a skill designed for a specific race. Traits refer to racial traits. For example, Dimika's underwater breathing and scales, and the Flower Fairy's flight, all belong to racial traits. Stripping the opponent's traits at the right time can even directly kill them. The final skill, Reaper's Descent, increases attributes by 100% within 120 seconds, which is a very direct enhancement ability. It is somewhat similar to my own giant spirit body, but it lasts a bit longer. 101 burly skeletons, with soul flames flickering in their eyes. After looking around the surrounding environment, Their gaze fell on Fang Hao. After a brief hesitation, all the Nisbets knelt on one knee in unison, lowering their heads. Greetings, great immortal king. The Nisbets' voices were low and hoarse, like throats that hadn't had water in a long time, or like a beast's warning. Fang Hao raised an eyebrow, looking at the kneeling skeletons in front of him with some surprise. This was the first time he had recruited a speaking unit from an undead unit building. A mouth that looks like a human's, but possesses intelligence. Of course, being able to speak is a good thing for Fang Hao. Rise, all of you. Welcome to your joining, Fang Hao said with a smile. Clatter, clatter, clatter. With a sound of bones rubbing, all the Nisbets stood up, continuing to look at Fang Hao, waiting for the next order. What's your name? Fang Hao asked the leading Nisbet. Nisbet? Huh. What about you? Fang Hao asked the second one. Nisbet. He continued to ask the third and fourth, and it was still Nisbet. Good heavens. All 101 skeletons were called Nisbet. This Nisbet is not only the unit's profession, but also its name. Calling them all by the same name would make it impossible to distinguish them in the future. Surely, I don't have to name them. After thinking for a moment, he said, Nisbet, all your names are the same, which will make it difficult to identify you in the future. How about I give you numbers? We obey your instructions, Lord, the Nisbets still said in unison. Fang Hao rubbed his ears and had everyone line up in a long, thin line. He said in turn, from now on, you are in I1, you are in I2, you are in I3. Fang Hao said in turn, numbering them from NI1 all the way to NI101. All the Nisbets also readily accepted their new numbers, showing no signs of dislike or opposition. Perhaps, the undead always possess a calm emotion. After numbering the Nisbets, next was the equipment phase. The Nisbets are over 4 meters tall, with large and strong bones. They are quite similar in build to trolls. Among the troll equipment, the best is the Slayer's Strength set, a blue troll set. Its defense reaches level 4, which can be said to be top tier among blue sets. Fang Hao opened the Lord's book and directly found the corresponding blueprint to craft it. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained Slayer's Strength set 101. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained Slayer's Wrath Battle Axe 101. Pieces of equipment appeared out of thin air around Fang Hao, scattered on the ground. All right, in I1, you command everyone to change their equipment, Fang Hao said. Yes, Lord, and I1 nodded, directing the Nisbets to start putting on the matching equipment on the ground. After they were all equipped, Fang Hao also nodded with satisfaction. Tier 10 units, just standing there, exuded a strong sense of oppression. They were very different from ordinary units. Oh, by the way, can you undergo hero trials to advance into heroes? A thought flashed through Fang Hao's mind, suddenly thinking of Tier 10 units advancing to heroes. Within the territory, the Tier 10 Bone Dragon, a unit converted from a corpse, cannot undergo hero trials. But normally recruited units, once they reach Tier 10, can undergo hero assessment. He just didn't know if these jackal-headed Nisbets met this requirement. And I1 directly replied, Lord, we can undergo hero assessment, but the difficulty of the assessment is higher than that of ordinary units, and the pass rate is not high. Based on the description, the Nisbet unit has some connection to ancient gods. Presumably, this is also the reason for the increased difficulty of the assessment. It's not a problem if it's difficult, as long as there's a chance. I will collect the hero's hearts needed for the hero assessment for you later, and then arrange for you to undergo the assessment, Fang Hao said directly. Thank you, Lord. And I1 replied calmly. No emotion could be heard, only indifference and hoarseness. Fang Hao communicated with them for a while, then began to assign tasks. The 101 Nisbets were divided into 2 teams. One team, led by NI-51, went to Blood Mountain Range Town North City to help Black Thorn attack Mount Chaos. Mount Chaos is the most mysterious place in the Blood Mountain Range. The orange hero Caius, taking offerings to the gods, is likely to face many uncertain dangers. Even though the trolls believe that the legendary god in Mount Chaos is a lie fabricated by the Bloodthroat chieftain. But Fang Hao had indeed opened the giant spirit body totem scroll from a treasure chest. The rewards in the treasure chests are all somewhat related to the current situation. This couldn't help but make him reconsider whether a god truly slept in Mount Chaos. Now that he had Tier 10 units, the primary task was naturally to support the front lines, minimizing the danger and losses in battle. The remaining 50 people stayed in the territory, responsible for the territory's safety, patrols, and night watch. After the arrangements were made, an I-51, along with the Nisbets with later numbers, immediately set off, following the route to Town North City. As for the remaining team, they first replaced the guards in the guard tower outside the Lord's mansion. They replaced the two desolate grave with NI-49 and NI-50. The remaining Nisbets were arranged outside the city for patrol and security work. After dealing with the Nisbets, Fang Hao continued to the industrial area to build the second blueprint he had obtained, the Mint. He chose a location and directly selected build. 30 minutes later, the Mint was built. Mint. Slots. Workers 0/12. Raw materials, gold, silver. Production, undead gold coins, undead silver coins. Description, through processing, can produce faction-specific currency. Seeing the currency type, Fang Hao was instantly dumbfounded. The currency of the undying undead is called skeleton gold, with a skull on the front and a stagnant hourglass on the back. It represents that death is not only pain and loneliness, but also eternal time and an immortal soul. The coinage technology of the undying undead is already very mature. In the exchange ratio of the Merchant Alliance, it reached a ratio of 2:1. This is already a very high exchange ratio between gold coins and common currency, and some races would even deliberately exchange for the undead race's gold coins. After returning, they would then be made into rough-textured beast-head gold and troll gold to extract the gold content within. In fact, all races use the common war coin, so it doesn't matter which faction's gold coins are produced. Even if they were to spend in human territory, they could exchange skeleton gold for war coins and then spend them in human cities. It just adds an extra step of exchange in between. It doesn't affect anything. Moreover, the current gold and silver reserves in the warehouse are not large, and the output of gold coins will not be too high before finding a mine that can extract gold and silver. So there is no need to build a second mint, and production can proceed slowly. He summoned 15 laborer skeletons to enter the mint. All the useless gold and silver objects in the warehouse were used to be remelted into gold and silver coins. After dealing with the mint, it was time for lunch. After lunch, Fang Hao planned to build the Pantheon and then upgrade the Organ Museum. He had just arrived at the city center, where the statues were placed. Suddenly, the sky above him was pressed down. Looking up, he saw a bone dragon soaring through the air and a giant spider wearing a maid outfit, pulling silk from the dragon's back, landed in front of Fang Hao. The moment it landed, it transformed from a giant spider form into a tall woman nearly 2 meters in height. It was Domina, the leader of the webweaver's camp. She wore a black and white maid's dress, and on her back were 4 pairs of slender, black, sharp leg blades. Seeing Fang Hao, Domina's cold face showed a hint of a smile. "Greetings, Lord." Fang Hao was also taken aback by Domina's sudden arrival. The webweaver's camp was not close to his location, and even riding a bone dragon would take most of the day. If there were no special circumstances, Domina would generally not come over. Domina, it's been a while," Fang Hao said with a smile. Domina's face flushed slightly. She adjusted her emotions and continued. "Lord, I came here this time to report 2 matters to you." Sit down and talk, Domina." Fang Hao gestured for her to sit on the bench opposite him. Domina sat down and continued. "Lord, half a week ago, the mine was attacked by the Blackstone tribe. Although we have repelled them, we may still be harassed by them in the future." Blackstone tribe. "Yes, Lord, the Blackstone tribe is a large tribe. This time, for some reason, they discovered the location of the mine, and a conflict has already occurred," Domina said. The Blackstone tribe had been frequently mentioned in Fang Hao's ears these past few days, from the mouths of the Blackfoot cats and the humans at the Merchant Alliance outpost. This time, Domina brought news of the Blackstone tribe attacking the mine again. One should know that the mine Domina was in charge of could produce mithril, which was the most valuable mine in his possession. Absolutely no mistakes could occur if the other party truly affected the mining operations. Even if the journey was long, Fang Hao would eliminate them to ensure the normal operation of the mine. All right, what's the second matter? Fang Hao continued to ask. The second matter is that we investigated the treasure cave to the east as you instructed, and we found a creature on that mountain that looks very much like a giant dragon. It should be guarding that mountain cave, Domina said while thinking. Last time at the webweaver's camp, Fang Hao helped Domina wipe out the attacking kobold tribe and found a large amount of jewelry and single-page maps among the spoils. Through the interrogation of the kobold chieftain, he learned about the treasure cave. At that time, Dimika was attacking the Bright Moon Highlands, so Fang Hao had Domina arrange for people to investigate first. The treasure cave Domina mentioned this time was this piece of information. Giant dragon? Fang Hao frowned. In this area, apart from his own bone dragon, he hadn't found any creatures related to giant dragons. Yes, Lord, its appearance is very similar to a giant dragon, but its size is much smaller, and there are many of them, Domina continued. The natives do not have the ability to detect unit names. When they see an unknown creature, they use similar species for comparison. How big is its body specifically? Fang Hao continued to ask. Its body is close to the size of a brown bear, and it also has huge wings. Its appearance is not much different from the dragon race. Domina had not seen a real dragon before, but the bone dragon was right here. The bones and body shape were almost the same. The only difference was the size. Young ones? Fang Hao asked. There are nearly 100 of them. I don't think they are real giant dragons, Domina said. Giant dragons possess powerful strength, but their race is extremely rare. Otherwise, this continent would have long been ruled by giant dragons, and there would be no living space for humans and beastmen. Have you found anything inside the cave? Lord, we giant spiders cannot fight against those dragon-shaped creatures. We only investigated the surrounding area and drew a detailed map. We did not enter the mountain cave, so we cannot be sure if there are enemies or treasures inside, Domina said with her head lowered. This was a fact. Unit tier is one aspect, but sometimes racial traits also determine which side has a greater advantage in battle. Giant spiders face difficulty in exerting their advantage against aerial flying units. They can even only passively take hits. Fang Hao thought for a moment and nodded, saying, All right, I understand this matter. You can rest in the territory tonight, and tomorrow we will set off together to investigate that mountain cave. Okay, Lord. After discussing with Domina, Fang Hao opened the Lord's book and continued to build the Pantheon. Pantheon, tough wood 3,200, fine stone bricks 3,000, cast iron blocks 420, metal parts 1,200, traces of prayer 12, traces of divinity 5, abundant essence 22. Confirm build. Light flickered, and an elegant and grand palace appeared before him. Sunlight shone on the building, reflecting a magnificent and dazzling light, with gray and white marble pillars and clean and neat white stone steps. There were also sculptures of maidens holding musical instruments on the long corridor. It gave people a feeling of a misty fairyland. I wonder if the god of the undead likes this kind of environment. Pantheon. Category: Temple. Abilities: Blessing, Kingdom Faith. Blessing. All place statues have their blessing attributes plus 15%. Kingdom Faith can place king statues in the temple, receiving faith from the subjects. Description: In the place closest to the gods, listen to the guidance of the gods. The biggest difference between the pantheon and the temple is the number of statues that can be placed. A temple can only house 2 statues, while there's no limit on the number of statues in a pantheon. As long as the statues don't repel each other, they can all be placed inside. The attribute increase also rose from 10% to 15%. Furthermore, a statue of the king can be erected to be worshipped by the residents. Although it happened somewhat abruptly, Fang Hao was sure that this king was himself. In other words, Fang Hao could erect his own statue in the pantheon. Erecting a statue would increase the territory's attributes. Erecting his own statue. Worshipping himself? It felt a bit strange. Currently, there are 4 statues in the territory. They are the goddess of fertility, the god of slaughter, the god of deceit, and the god of undead, which was unlocked by the temple. He placed all the statues into the pantheon. A halo of light spread from the temple, enveloping the territory. After dealing with the pantheon, Fang Hao continued to upgrade the Spring of Rejuvenation and the Skeleton Conversion Ground. After the upgrade of the Spring of Rejuvenation, the water output increased from 1 unit per hour to 2 units per hour. The capacity of the well also expanded to 100 units. The upgrade of the Skeleton Conversion Ground reduced the conversion time and the level decrease of the converted units. Previously, each unit would drop 2 levels after conversion, but now they would only drop 1 level. This better preserved the combat power of the corpses in life. Finally, the organ museum was left unupgraded, as Nelson was still in seclusion in the stone door, making demon puppets. To avoid any danger to Nelson during the upgrade, Fang Hao decided it wouldn't be too late to upgrade after Nelson finished his seclusion. Fang Hao was busy for a whole day with the upgrades and construction of buildings. By the time everything was done, it was already very late. After dinner, Fang Hao read a magic book for a while in his room before going to bed. The next morning, after breakfast, Fang Hao and the others began to check their equipment, preparing to set off. According to the agreement with Domina yesterday, they would ride bone dragons to the Weaver camp to explore the treasure cave and check on the trouble brought by the Blackrock tribe. He summoned 20 bone dragons, carrying 40 Nisbets, 20 skeleton trolls, 70 skeleton archers, and a large number of skeleton giant bats. Since Domina had already scouted the enemy, who were similar to dragon-like creatures. Therefore, Fang Hao specifically brought more skeleton archers and skeleton giant bats. After many battles, it was confirmed that archers and giant bats were more effective against flying enemies. Although the giant bats could fly, they couldn't maintain flight for a long time. So on the way to the Weaver camp, they needed to attach themselves to the bone dragons and be carried for the journey. The giant bats would not be calculated by seating capacity. Roughly each bone dragon could carry 80 skeleton giant bats in flight. Fang Hao allocated 6 bone dragons, which would carry 480 skeleton giant bats. In terms of heroes, Fang Hao called upon Dimikga, Anya, and the giant spider spirit, Domina. Nelson continued to stay in the territory and remain in seclusion to make demon puppets. As for Rolana, she had already returned to Blood Castle last night, riding the bone dragon Fang Hao had given her. She also told Fang Hao that if anything happened, he could send someone to inform her. It was clear that Rolana was showing willingness to integrate into this group. After everything was ready, the 20 bone dragons carrying the troops soared into the sky, flying majestically towards the direction of the Weaver camp. The bone dragons were very fast. They flew quickly through the clouds, with the wind whistling past their ears. After flying for half a day, they finally arrived at the Weaver camp at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The bone dragons landed in the open space outside the camp. The undead soldiers on their backs also dismounted from the bone dragons, standing ready. Thump, thump, thump. Intense footsteps sounded from the dense forest ahead. Following that, a large number of humanoid spider-transformed units, armed with swords, sabers, and longbows, rushed out of the dense forest. Upon seeing Domina, they bowed slightly. At this moment, behind the spider-transformed soldiers, a dog-headed man in tattered jeans stumbled out. He first fawningly said to Domina, "Lord Domina, you've finally returned. You didn't come back yesterday, and I was so worried I didn't sleep at all." As soon as he finished speaking, his eyes fell upon Fang Hao and Anya. He immediately recognized Fang Hao's identity and knelt on the ground, saying, "Lord Commander, you're here. I dreamed last night that something good would happen, and it really came true." Without thinking, the one before him was the dog-headed leader he had defeated. "Didn't you say you were worried about Domina all night and didn't sleep? How did you have a dream?" Anya found a loophole in his words and said rather seriously, "Oh, I dreamed in the latter half of the night." The dog-headed man explained, constantly scratching his tattered jeans with one hand. Domina looked at the dog-headed man and asked, "Did anyone from the Blackrock tribe come to cause trouble yesterday?" "No, but there are many scouts from those guys around. always watching us near the mine. Now, the dog-headed man had built a new village outside the mithril mine. Moreover, with Fang Hao's continuous support, the living conditions of the dog-headed miners were gradually improving. The dog-headed man also didn't want to be attacked by the notorious Blackrock tribe. This would destroy their gradually improving way of life. Domina looked at Fang Hao again and said softly, "Lord, the scouts the Blackrock tribe have placed around the mine are increasing. I'm afraid they will attack the mine soon. We should make plans in advance." Fang Hao didn't take the Blackrock tribe seriously. His undead army was large enough to flatten their tribe. The only difficulty was the disconnected road section between the territory and the mine. The distance between the two places was too long. The territory and this area were separated by large areas of orc tribes and unknown locations. Especially now that the Copper Bulls and the Tasco Orc City were discussing trade cooperation. Rashly moving the undead army on a large scale to the east was likely to cause trouble that he couldn't predict. Even if he had a large army, he still had to be careful. Once too much commotion was made, it would affect his development and the current peace. A large-scale undead army could easily unite the scattered orcs and escalate into a racial battle. In history, there were indeed stories of living beings uniting to defeat the undead. But the matter of the mithril mine also needed to be resolved. Fang Hao began to think about countermeasures. Under the cover of night, he could have the bone dragons launch a wave of dragon breath at the Blackrock tribe, reducing their population. Or he could contact the Blackrock tribe's enemy tribes and cooperate with them. If not openly, there were many covert methods. "Let's deal with the treasure cave first, and then make a plan against the Blackrock tribe," Fang Hao said. "Yes, Lord, everything according to your command," Domina nodded. "All right, Domina, go gather your people. Bring as many archer units as possible. We'll set off immediately," Fang Hao continued. "Yes, Lord." While Domina went to gather her people, Fang Hao didn't rest either. He opened his lord's book and began to craft handcarts and iron arrows. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained 303 handcarts. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained 505,000 iron arrows. The merchant carriages were parked in the open space, and a large number of arrows appeared out of thin air, falling like rain all around. The number of iron arrows might not be needed this much. Even if there were leftovers, they could be used by the humanoid giant spider archers later. A large number of giant spiderlings walked out of the dense forest in a long line. They gathered the arrows scattered on the ground and then used white spider silk to bundle them. This method of gathering equipment was far more efficient than manually organizing arrows. In less than 10 minutes, all the arrows on the ground were gathered and neatly stacked on the handcarts. The open space was cleared, and Fang Hao continued to craft dragon-locking ballistae and ballista bolts. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained 101 dragon-locking ballistae. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained 10,100 ballista bolts. The ballistae and ballista bolts were crafted and scattered on the ground around them. The dragon-locking ballistae had wheels at the bottom for easy transport. The heavy bolts were more like javelins, exceeding the scope of arrows. The giant spiderlings tried to organize them, but couldn't even lift them. The skeleton warriors nearby were needed to organize them. The necessary equipment was crafted, and Domina also came out with her subordinates. "Lord, besides the troops guarding the camp, I have gathered 100 spider-transformed archers and 50 spider-transformed warriors," Domina said. "Good, get ready, we'll set off immediately." "Yes, Lord." After a final check of the equipment, the large group began to set off. They continued east from the Weaver camp, encountering some wild beasts along the way, who followed the group from a distance. There were quite a few people in the group, so the wild beasts only followed for a while before retreating back into the forest. Fang Hao and the others, led by Domina, finally arrived at the edge of the treasure cave mountain. Ahead was a tall mountain. The mountain was covered with thick ancient trees, lush and connected. The shade was dense, and there wasn't even a visible path to go up the mountain. "Lord, it's this mountain. The treasure cave on the map is located on the mountainside." Domina transformed into her giant spider form, her lower body becoming a huge spider. "Where are those dragon-like creatures you mentioned?" Fang Hao stood to the side and asked. They are hidden in the dense forest on the mountain. As long as someone approaches, they will attack, and there are many of them, Domina explained. It seemed there were no other wild beasts nearby. Only the dragon-like creatures Domina mentioned lived here. Fang Hao thought for a moment and continued to ask. The terrain on the mountain is not suitable for ballistae and archers. Can these enemies be lured out? Probably. Last time, when we were scouting this area, we were chased for a long distance. Domina, in her giant spider form, lay on the ground and said, Okay, then prepare for battle here. Dimika, you will be in charge of the overall arrangement of the battle. Fang Hao immediately said. Dimika stepped forward. Yes, Lord. Then, he loudly issued commands to the group. Reinforce the ballistae. Archers, check your equipment. Anya, command the infantry forward to prevent enemies from coming down the mountain. Command after command was issued. With the commands given, everyone began to move. The ballistae were reinforced and loaded with bolts. The skeleton archers and spider-transformed archers also prepared their arrows, waiting for the enemy to approach. The melee units moved to the front of the group. This was to be ready to defend if any land units charged down. With everything prepared, Fang Hao directly cast Divine Presence, controlling a skeleton archer, and stepped directly into the dense forest on the mountain. The mountain path was difficult to walk, requiring the use of a dagger to cut through branches and thorns to proceed. He went all the way to the mountainside. Fang Hao indeed saw the dragon-like creatures gathered around the cave. Pseudo-Dragon Guard, Tier 7. Just as Domina had described. These pseudo-dragon guards had an appearance very close to that of real dragons, or rather, a miniature version of dragons. But each one was close to the size of an adult bear. They had reddish-brown scales for legs and red fleshy wings. They landed on rocks and trees, resting or chasing each other. There were indeed quite a few of them. Tier 7 was considered a relatively high tier among units, and they were considered dominant creatures in this area. At least ordinary tribes wouldn't dare to provoke these pseudo-dragons. He reconfirmed the surrounding situation. After not finding any other creatures, Fang Hao picked up his bow, drew it, and shot an arrow at a pseudo-dragon in a tree hollow ahead. Whoosh! Thud! The surface of the pseudo-dragon was covered with a layer of scales, but it clearly didn't have the defensive power of a true dragon. The iron arrow pierced the scales on the surface and embedded itself in the pseudo-dragon's neck. Although the wound wasn't deep, it made the pseudo-dragon let out a painful shriek. Fang Hao didn't linger, hung the bow on his back, turned around, and ran down the mountain. Meanwhile, the pseudo-dragons also discovered the suspicious intruder at this moment. Coupled with the arrow stuck in their companion's neck, they all let out shrieks. Whoosh whoosh. A large number of pseudo-dragons soared into the sky, chasing the fleeing intruder. Fang Hao's feet never stopped, and he didn't dare to check the sound of something breaking the air behind him. He wasn't afraid of dying, but he was afraid that the controlled skeleton would die, and he would have to lure the enemies again. Fang Hao ran wildly and quickly rushed out of the dense forest. When he saw Dimika and the others waiting ahead, Fang Hao took the opportunity to look back. In the air behind him were a large number of pseudo-dragons. There were even more than he had imagined, at least over 300. The pseudo-dragons also discovered the army below. Not only were there the spider creatures that had appeared 2 days ago, but there were also so many skeletons. The pseudo-dragons instantly changed their target, no longer paying attention to the fleeing skeleton, but charging towards the mixed army below. The pseudo-dragons flying in the sky, covering the sun, still brought a considerable sense of oppression. The undead didn't feel much tension, but the spider-transformed soldiers' expressions began to change, and their spider legs started to tremble slightly. Dimika looked at the approaching pseudo-dragons. He said coldly, "Attack!" Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Bang, bang. Arrows were as dense as a large net, covering the pseudo-dragons head-on. The ballistae also let out earth-shattering sounds, and thick ballista bolts were also shot into the air. The pseudo-dragon guards, with their reddish-brown scales, shimmered faintly in the afternoon sun. The pseudo-dragons possessed high mobility, their bodies performing various evasive maneuvers in the air to dodge the incoming barrage of arrows. However, The arrows covered a large area. Even with the pseudo-dragons employing various methods to evade, some were still struck by arrows. With painful hisses, they plummeted from the sky like dumplings falling into a pot, accompanied by crackling sounds. Their scales still provided the pseudo-dragons with decent defense. The pseudo-dragons that fell shook their dazed heads and continued to fly back into the sky to attack. There were also unlucky pseudo-dragons that were directly pierced by the dragon-locking crossbow bolts, leaving a bowl-sized hole in their bodies, resulting in instant death. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The second and third waves of arrows followed closely. Arrows poured out as if they were free, and the pseudo-dragons looked like porcupines flying in the air, their bodies bristling with arrows. At the same time, more and more pseudo-dragons, severely injured, fell to the ground and never got up again. After the third wave, the number of pseudo-dragons had already been halved, but there were still over 100 of them, charging forward fearlessly. Soon, they reached the skies above the undead army. The trolls began to throw flying axes, and 20 Nisbets also used their trait stripping skill on the pseudo-dragons. Instantly, the heads of 20 pseudo-dragons were enveloped in a black mist. The next second, their wings twitched as if in spasms, unable to perform flight actions any longer. Falling from the sky, the Nisbets stepped forward, raised the battle axes in their hands, and directly chopped off the pseudo-dragons' heads. Fang Hao stood at the rear of the formation, watching the skills released by the Nisbets. The pseudo-dragons, stripped of their flight trait, fell from the sky one by one as if suffering from Parkinson's. As expected, it was just as I thought. This was consistent with his thoughts. The trait referred to the racial trait, with no deeper interpretation. The skill form released by trait stripping was more like a type of curse ability. The presented effect was also like the loss of physical abilities after being cursed. The battle continued. The skeleton giant bats began to move out, trembling and engaging with the remaining pseudo-dragon guards. The pseudo-dragon's attack methods could currently be confirmed as 2. Biting and tail attacks. The tip of the pseudo-dragon's tail was a stinger, similar to a scorpion's. The stinger could easily pierce the skull of a skeleton giant bat, and its movements were also very fast. But the skeleton giant bats had the advantage of sheer numbers and felt no pain. They entangled themselves with the pseudo-dragons relentlessly. Large numbers of pseudo-dragon guards were kept outside the formation by various means. A small number of pseudo-dragons, covered in arrows, bypassed the skeleton giant bats and directly swooped into the formation below, engaging in close combat. Changed to melee weapons. Manga ordered again. All the archers put away their longbows and took out the melee weapons from their waists. And Jia and Domina also led the melee teams they commanded and began to clear out the surrounding pseudo-dragons. Even the pseudo-dragons that charged into the formation were killed at a faster rate. It could be seen that although this creature's appearance was close to that of a dragon, its nature was more akin to the instinct of a wild beast. Aggressive and not very intelligent. Unable to judge whether their side would have an advantage based on the enemy's numbers and equipment level. Even though they had no advantage in the battle, they still launched an attack regardless, even appearing ready to fight to the death. Soon, a large number of pseudo-dragons were cleared out. Some pseudo-dragons that realized too late and tried to escape were also surrounded by the skeleton giant bats and directly gnawed down to bare bones. Bones and shredded flesh scattered in the air. Lord, all enemies have been killed. Manga walked back with large strides. Fang Hao nodded. Okay, clean up the battlefield and collect all the corpses. Yes, Lord. Manga took the order and stepped back, beginning to command everyone to clean up the battlefield. Collecting arrows, dealing with the corpses scattered around. Just as everyone was busy, and Jia walked over cautiously. Hey, what is it? You won't use many of these little dragons for conversion, right? Can you leave a few? And Jia said mysteriously. Fang Hao was startled and asked curiously, do you need them? Ahem. It has nothing to do with me. I'm asking for Domina. She said she wanted to try if these little dragons are tasty. And Jia said, Fang Hao frowned. Domina eats this stuff? For edible food, Fang Hao would be prompted with slaughterable. Since it didn't appear, it might not be poisonous, but it was not within the category of food. No, she said she would feed them to the queen spider in her camp, not that she would eat them. Oh, then leave her some. Fang Hao nodded in agreement. Okay. And Jia agreed and walked to the front of the team again, whispering instructions to Domina. Then, he saw Domina directing the spider-human soldiers to wrap 5 well-preserved corpses with spider silk. They were wrapped into cocoons. Not long after, the battlefield was also cleaned up. The arrows were recovered. They also obtained 142 wriggling spines. Other than that, no other spoils were obtained. Lord, the scouts are back, and no enemies have been found on the road to the cave. Dimiko walked over again. Fang Hao nodded with satisfaction. Good. Leave some men to guard the supplies, and we'll go up the mountain. Yes, Lord. The location of the treasure cave was halfway up the mountain. Without a map, it would be really difficult to find the location in such a tall mountain. The road up the mountain was not easy to walk. Carts and corpses could not be carried at all. Dimiga arranged for people to stay at the foot of the mountain. In addition to guarding the items, they could also be careful of enemies appearing from behind. Fang Hao and the others formed a long line. The skeleton trolls walked at the front of the team, hacking at the thorny bushes blocking the road with the battle axes in their hands, allowing the team to pass smoothly. They came all the way to the mountainside and saw the location of the treasure cave. Everyone approached and looked at the huge cave. The cave was very tall, and standing in front of it, they felt very small. Traces of excavation could be seen around the cave. Set up a perimeter. I'll go in and take a look, Fang Hao said. After casting Divine Arrival, he used the skeleton gray sparrow to enter the cave. The skeleton gray sparrow was small and not easily noticed by others. Even if there were powerful creatures inside the cave, there was a high chance they would overlook a tiny gray sparrow. The cave was dark and deep, with uneven rock walls on both sides. Perhaps because he had been dealing with cemeteries during this time. Fang Hao even suspected that this stone cave halfway up the mountain was also an ancient tomb or some ruins. The cave was winding and twisting, but fortunately, there was only one path. Continuing forward, he could see some moss-like plants in the corners of the cave, emitting a faint green fluorescence. Fluorescent mycelial mat. The deeper he went, the larger the area of this mycelial mat became. It covered the ground and walls, truly like a giant carpet. Fang Hao controlled the skeleton gray sparrow to land directly on the mycelial mat, and it didn't show any aggressiveness. It should just be a type of fungal plant that grows in special environments. Soon, Fang Hao flew into the depths of the cave. Various luminous stones began to appear around him, and as his vision was illuminated, Fang Hao's heart suddenly skipped a beat. This was a vast space with a very wide area. Rather than a cave, it was more like a palace carved inside the mountain. The walls of the rock surface were no longer rough, and chandeliers hung from the ceiling, covered in luminous stones. On the stone pillars supporting the top, some beautiful patterns were carved. This presented a huge contrast to the stone cave corridor outside. In the center of the palace was a huge rectangular stone platform, covered with a large amount of fur. Aside from the size being incorrect, it looked more like a giant stone bed. And surrounding the stone bed were piles of gold coins and gems. The light flickering from the gems and gold almost blinded Fang Hao. Crazy. Had he found the treasure of the Pirate King? How could there be so much treasure? The quantity of jewels greatly surprised Fang Hao. After calming down for a while, Fang Hao finally suppressed the shock in his heart. Flapping his wings, he flew around the cave, and apart from the ground covered with gold, silver, and jewels, he didn't find any danger or enemies. After confirming that there were no enemies or dangers, Fang Hao controlled the skeleton gray sparrow to fly out again. Dismissing Divine Arrival, and Jia asked, "How is it?" "No danger, there's a lot of money inside," Fang Hao replied. "A lot of money?" "A lot of money. The cave is filled with gold coins and gems," Fang Hao said with certainty. And Jia frowned and touched his forehead. "Did you eat some mushrooms?" "No." Fang Hao also checked the light feather dagger he wore at his waist, confirming that he was not cursed or mentally disturbed. Then, he wasn't hallucinating. There was indeed a lot of treasure inside. Fang Hao opened the Lord's book and crafted a large number of troll-stitched marching tents. These tents were stitched together from large pieces of animal hide and could be used to wrap gold coins and gems for transport. "Let's go in," Fang Hao ordered directly. Everyone, carrying the stitched animal hides and holding luminous stones, walked into the cave. Just a few meters in, Dimika suddenly stopped the advancing team. Holding a luminous stone, he squatted on the ground. "Lord, there are footprints on the ground leading outwards." Fang Hao and Njia quickly came to Dimika's side and also found footprints moving outwards on the ground. When Fang Hao entered before, there were no luminous stones for illumination. He also didn't notice the footprints on the ground. Now that Dimika mentioned it, he also realized what he was trying to convey. Someone had left the cave. Judging from the traces of the footprints, it hasn't been long, just a few days, Dimika analyzed and said. Upon hearing this, Fang Hao suddenly thought of the Blood Hunter. He had taken advantage of his absence to empty Yinfeng Castle. Why was this happening again now? Wasn't this ill-gotten gain? Fang Hao stood up and immediately said, "Speed up, finish moving quickly, don't disturb him when he comes back to rest." The pseudo-dragons outside were the guards protecting the treasure inside the cave. Since they had even killed people, the feud was already established. Leaving now wouldn't change anything, so it was better to be more thorough. "Okay, continue forward," Dimika ordered again. The large team quickly moved forward. Upon entering the deep palace, everyone's expressions also changed. Mountains of treasure piled up. How much money was this? Move everything to the carts at the foot of the mountain. Domina, ride the bone dragon first, transport the corpses back, and then return, Fang Hao ordered directly. "Okay, Lord." Domina agreed and left directly. The remaining skeleton trolls and spider-human soldiers opened the large stitched animal hides, filled them with gold, silver, and jewels, and sealed the openings with spider silk. They were directly transported to the location at the foot of the mountain. The skeleton soldiers went in and out, carrying out bags and packages. As the surface jewelry decreased, everyone found golden treasure chests and dragon crystals on the ground. The moment he saw the dragon crystals, Fang Hao also knew that the original owner of this cave was probably a real giant dragon. Then the footprints at the entrance might belong to other humans, or possibly dragons who had transformed into human form. Before, Domina had told him, many races would gain the ability to transform into human form after becoming heroes. Maintaining their original size would consume a huge amount of energy, so these races would appear in humanoid form more often, while retaining some of their original characteristics. Just like the humanoid Domina, she retained her chitin armor and spider legs. It was very likely that this was a dragon that could transform into human form. "Lord, everything has been moved, and the traces we left have also been cleaned up," Dimika walked over again. "Okay, everyone has worked hard," Fang Hao nodded and said. "Lord, we can leave now. It's already late outside, and we might not return to the Weaver's camp until the latter half of the night," Dimika continued. The time spent fighting the pseudo-dragon guards was not as long as the time spent transporting. It was now also 10 o'clock at night. The wild at night was very dangerous. "Wait a moment, and Jia, can you write orc text?" Fang Hao asked. "That depends on what word." "Like this, right on this pillar. The treasure has been taken by my black stone tribe. If you're not happy, come and chop me, you little dragon." "Hee hee, you're so naughty." And Jia smiled and also understood Fang Hao's intention. He immediately carved Fang Hao's words on the stone pillar. Halfway through, he turned back and asked, "How do you write chop?" "You're asking me? Then draw a cleaver." "Okay." Dimika stood behind, watching the two discuss how to replace the words they couldn't write. He could only leave first, directing everyone to prepare for the return journey. Soon, the crooked and twisted provocative words were written. The two went down the mountain directly, and the team began to return. The large team moved quickly through the night. In the bushes on both sides of the road, the sound of creatures following the convoy, moving through the forest, could be heard. Fortunately, the team also had a large number of undead, and there were many people in the team. After following for a while, as they approached the Weaver's camp, They all gave up following. Domina arranged rooms for everyone. Fang Hao and Njia were assigned a room suspended in the air, fixed by white spider webs. Because the spider-human soldiers didn't sleep in beds, the two also slept on the ground. Just as they closed their eyes, they heard the rustling sound of spiders crawling outside. A wave of discomfort welled up in their hearts. The next morning, Fang Hao walked out with dark circles under his eyes. A giant spider cub, carrying 2 pieces of roasted meat, delivered them to Fang Hao. On the roasted meat, there were still reddish-brown scales that hadn't been completely removed. The grilled meat was somewhat roughly made. It looked like the meat had just been cut into chunks, grilled until cooked, and then sprinkled with some seasoning. It simply couldn't compare to the food Ear made. Moreover, the grilled meat in front of him looked exactly like the pseudo-dragon guard they had killed yesterday. There had been no prompt about butchering the pseudo-dragon guard's corpse. Fang Hao dared not casually eat this kind of meat. Many creatures have toxins in their flesh to reduce their natural predators. It would be quite a waste if he got poisoned just by eating something randomly. Just as he was about to tell the giant spider hatchling to take the grilled meat away, Anya directly rushed out of the room. "The grilled meat is here. Let me taste what it's like." Saying that, she picked it up and took a bite. She chewed it a couple of times and savored the taste. The next second, she spat it out in one go. "It's not tasty, and it's poisonous." "Damn it." Fang Hao cursed, immediately took out drinking water, and helped Anya rinse her mouth. At the same time, he told the giant spider hatchling to take the grilled meat away. The giant spider hatchling, holding the tray, turned and ran off. Fang Hao also called a spiderweb warrior from outside the door. He told him to inform Domina that this meat was poisonous and couldn't be eaten. The spiderweb warrior left, and Fang Hao, watching Anya squatting on the ground rinsing her mouth, frowned slightly. Didn't Domina say that the pseudo-dragon corpse was for the giant spider queen as reserve food? Why was it sent here so early in the morning? Coupled with Anya's eagerness to eat just now, Fang Hao also guessed something. It seemed that Anya had told Domina to send a portion over after it was ready. He glared at Anya irritably, squatted down, and asked, "How is it? How did you know it was poisonous?" "My tongue is still numb, so it's definitely poisonous. I have experience," Anya said with a slightly slurred tongue. Among Anya's racial traits, there was the trait poison resistance. As long as she wasn't directly poisoned to death, she would slowly dilute the toxins in her body and eventually recover. This was also the main reason why Anya dared to eat anything and was still alive today. If it were any other race, with her suicidal eating habits, she might have died several times already. From his storage space, he found a detoxification potion and directly gave it to Anya to drink. After a while, Dimitega arrived, and Anya also recovered to normal. Fang Hao took out some prepared flatbreads and gave them to the two of them as breakfast. Anya ate while complaining that dragon meat was just SOSO. Not only was it poisonous, but the most important thing was that it wasn't tasty. After breakfast, the group also walked out of the room. In the center of the camp, they saw Domina directing work. "How are the preparations?" Fang Hao asked. "My lord, everything is ready. 20 bone dragons can completely carry these spoils of war back," Domina replied. The gold, silver, and jewels brought back yesterday were divided into 20 portions and wrapped in leather. They were secured with layers of spider silk on the backs of the 20 bone dragons. This could ensure that the packages would not fall off or be damaged during high-speed flight. Well done. The skeleton archers and skeleton trolls brought this time will all be left with you. You will command them then, Fang Hao continued. Domina hesitated slightly, but still asked, "My lord, what are your plans regarding the Blackrock tribe?" The strength of the Weaver's camp and the Blackrock tribe were completely not on the same level. The only thing Domina could rely on was Fang Hao's undead army. If Fang Hao wasn't willing to intervene, not only would she be unable to defend the mithril mine, but even her own camp could be occupied by the Blackrock tribe. Spiderweb sprites were already disliked by the orcs. Falling into the hands of the notorious Blackrock tribe, the consequences were imaginable. Fang Hao thought for a moment and said, "I will arrange for bone dragons to continue transporting some troops here then, which can ensure your safety. Later, if the owner of the treasure cave doesn't attack Blackrock, I will arrange for bone dragons to clear out the Blackrock tribe." The owner of the treasure cave? Domina frowned slightly. When Fang Hao and Anya were carving provocative words inside the cave, Domina was still directing the bone dragons to transport the spoils of war back to the camp in batches. She was not aware of this matter. Fang Hao roughly explained it to her, and Domina instantly understood Fang Hao's idea. He wanted to borrow a knife to kill someone. Okay, my lord. Then we will wait a few more days according to your plan, Domina said. And Fang Hao nodded. After explaining the matter of the Black Rock tribe, Fang Hao's gaze directly fell on the golden treasure chest next to him. He walked closer and opened the treasure chest. Large areas of blue light flickered. Obtained. Giant Dragon White Steel Helmet Blueprint, blue. Giant Dragon White Steel Armor Blueprint, blue. Giant Dragon White Steel Claw Armor Blueprint, blue. Giant Dragon White Steel Tail Spike Blueprint, blue. Dragon Crystal +8. War Fire Coin plus 120. Seeing the blueprints and dragon crystals that were opened, a look of joy appeared on Fang Hao's face. Finally, there was equipment that bone dragons could wear. Bone dragons were one of the most powerful units in the territory, and their mobility and combat capabilities were very strong. But up until now, the bone dragon's armor consisted of 2 metal shields fixed to their chests to serve as defensive armor. The defense was not high, and when the bone dragons were flying quickly, they rattled, which was very inconvenient. Now, there was finally armor that bone dragons could wear. Giant Dragon White Steel Helmet Blueprint. Thick Tough Leather 20, Iron 22, White Steel Ingot 18, White Steel Plate 10, Metal Parts 22. Giant Dragon White Steel Armor Blueprint. Thick Tough Leather 120, Iron 100, White Steel Ingot 80, White Steel Plate 60, Metal Parts 100. Giant Dragon White Steel Claw Armor Blueprint. Thick Tough Leather 60, Iron 50, White Steel Ingot 42, White Steel Plate 20, Metal Parts 65. Giant Dragon White Steel Tail Armor / Tail Spike Blueprint. Thick Tough Leather 90, Iron 80, White Steel Ingot 70, White Steel Plate 45, Metal Parts 55. True dragons are huge in size, and the resources consumed are much higher than normal armor. However, fortunately, these 4 blueprints were all blue, and the materials were only white steel and ordinary materials. Fang Hao had a relatively sufficient supply of these in his hands. After returning, he could start crafting and equipping the bone dragons. In addition, he had obtained a lot of dragon crystals from this cave, which could also expand the number of bone dragons. This could greatly improve the strength of the territory. The final dragon crystals and war fire coins were nothing special. He directly put them into his storage space. Using the Lord's book, he recorded the blueprints. After giving Domina a few instructions, Fang Hao led his men to board the bone dragons and return to the territory with the spoils of this operation. Upon returning to the territory, it was already 3 p.m. 20 bone dragons with their backs loaded with spoils of war landed on the open space in front of the Lord's mansion, raising a huge cloud of dust. "Master, you're back." Ear, with some maids, quickly rushed out. Nothing happened in the territory the day I was away, right?" Fang Hao jumped down from the bone dragon and stroked Ear's little head. "Nothing, master. Nothing happened in the territory, and Scholar Nelson hasn't come out either," Ear reported softly. The area around the territory was surrounded by layers of undead. As soon as strangers or wild beasts approached, they would be attacked by the army. So there were basically no problems, and for the other affiliated cities, if there were special circumstances, they would contact Fang Hao through the sound transmission conch, and it wouldn't be conveyed to Ear. And it's good that nothing happened. Fang Hao smiled and nodded, then said to the people behind him, "Anya, you command the skeletons to transport those pseudo-dragon corpses to the conversion pool, and and the rest of you, move the packages from the dragons' backs." After greeting Ear, Anya directed the skeletons to transport the brought-back pseudo-dragon corpses to the conversion pool. Nie and Air sure, following Fang Hao's orders, cut the spider silk fixing the beast skin packages and took the packages down. There were a total of 20 packages, which landed on the ground with loud thuds, accompanied by the sound of coins clinking. "Open the packages." One by one, the packages were opened, and with a whoosh, Large piles of gold coins and gems scattered down, forming 20 small mountains of gold coins. Wow! The maids let out exclamations of surprise. The afternoon sun shone on the gold coins, sparkling with brilliant light. The maids' eyes widened, and they stood frozen in disbelief. How much money must this be? It was the first time they had ever seen so much money. Actually, Fang Hao also had money. But the storage and weight of gold coins were also a burden, so each time a certain amount was reached, it would be sent to the Merchant Alliance to be exchanged for Warfire cards. The amount on the Warfire cards was large, but the effect was definitely not as impactful as the piles of gold coins in front of them. Human gold coins 750,000, silver coins 520,000, orc gold coins 1,150,000, silver coins 680,000, dwarf gold coins 320,000, silver coins 150,000, undead gold coins 450,000, silver coins 120,000, elf gold coins 30,000, silver coins 50,000, gold equipment 200,000, silver equipment 500,000, gems and agates 3,240,000. With the system's assistance, the quantity and types of items had already been automatically counted. There were many types of currency. In addition to human, orc, and undead currency, there were also dwarf and elf currencies inside. He had seen dwarf currency at the Merchant Alliance auction, but as for the legendary elves, he had not seen them yet. Arrange for people to sort these spoils of war. The money will be exchanged for Warfire cards by Duojin then, and the gems and gold and silver equipment will be sent directly to the basement. Fang Hao instructed softly. Okay, master. Clapped her hands and said to the maids behind her, all right, stop being stunned. Go prepare some boxes and separate the coins and gems. The maids recovered from their shock and began to bring several large boxes according to Ear's instructions. They started sorting the coins and gems. While the maids were busy, Fang Hao went to the skeleton conversion ground. From afar, he saw Anya directing the skeleton soldiers to throw the pseudo-dragon guard corpses into the conversion pool. Over 300 pseudo-dragon skeletons were being devoured little by little in the conversion pool, eventually unlocking a new unit type. Okay, they're all thrown in. Nothing else for me to do, right? I'm going to find Luali to play, Anya said. Go ahead, it's almost dinner time. Don't come back late, Fang Hao reminded. Oh. Soon, he saw Anya riding a giant lizard, waving at him while slowly moving away. 5 minutes later, the first pseudo-dragon guard was converted, and at the same time, a new unit type was unlocked in the conversion ground. Skeleton pseudo-dragon guard, Tier 6. Faction, Undead. Racial traits, Undead, Hollow skeleton, light weakness, emotional language. Skills, keen senses, magic resistance, bite, spike. Innate abilities, intermediate flight mastery, intermediate hunting mastery. Emotional language, this unit cannot speak, but can share its emotions through sensing. Keen senses, this unit has an advantage in perception and awareness. Magic resistance plus 15%. Bite, melee attack, pouncing and biting the target unit. Spike, the tail spike attacks the target. Low resistance units will enter a poisoned and stunned state. External interference can terminate the target's stun effect early. Note, skeleton units converted from corpses still retain the characteristics and attack methods from when they were alive. Fang Hao nodded. Although the attributes of the skeleton pseudo-dragon were average, there was nothing particularly outstanding. But it could replace the position of the skeleton giant bat. The flying unit had changed from Tier 3 to Tier 6. But when Fang Hao saw the recruitment requirements for the pseudo-dragon, the smile on his face immediately faded. Skeleton pseudo-dragon guard, Tier 6 wriggling spine 6, mark of death 3, dragon crystal 3. He could tolerate the first two materials. Recruiting a flying unit that could only bite and spike actually required 3 dragon crystals. Not to mention that the effect of this pseudo-dragon and the giant bat wasn't much different. Even if it had some special skills, Fang Hao wasn't willing to spend 3 dragon crystals to recruit it. Bloodstone Blood Castle could be continuously cleared, which was easier to obtain than these dragon crystals. The skeleton giant bat was still the most cost-effective. After looking at the attributes of the skeleton pseudo-dragon, Fang Hao continued to handle his own matters. The most important reason he came here was to continue recruiting bone dragons. The dragon crystals obtained from the treasure cave and the treasure chest this time reached 32. He planned to recruit all of them into bone dragons. Bone dragon, wriggling spine 10, mark of death 7, stars silver 5, dragon crystal 10. Mark of death and star silver were also stored in the warehouse, meeting the recruitment requirements. He adjusted the recruitment quantity to 3. Confirmed recruitment. Hundredfold increase triggered, recruiting bone dragon 303. Whoosh. In an instant, the sky darkened. 303 bone dragons appeared in midair, circling above Fang Hao. Go wait outside the city, Fang Hao said loudly. The bone dragons flapped their wings and flew towards outside the city. Fang Hao did not leave the city immediately, but went to the blacksmith shop and called all the blacksmiths, leaving the territory together. On the open space outside the territory. In addition to the 303 newly recruited ones, there were also 72 bone dragons recruited before. The rest of the bone dragons were stationed in some affiliated territories and the Bloody Fortress, assisting Blackthorn in battle. Fang Hao opened the Lord's book and found the giant dragon equipment blueprints. He began crafting. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained giant dragon white steel helmet 404. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained giant dragon white steel armor 404. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained giant dragon white steel claw armor 404. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained giant dragon white steel tail armor / tail spike 404. Giant dragons are naturally large in size, and their equipment is also huge and heavy. They appeared out of thin air one by one, landing on the ground with loud thuds. Kulin, you lead the people to equip these pieces of equipment onto the bone dragons, Fang Hao said to the blacksmith captain. Okay, my lord. The next day, after breakfast, Fang Hao had just sent off the old chief of the black-footed cat tribe. Then he saw the skeleton merchant, Duo Jin, walking towards him with a short figure. Seeing Fang Hao, he bowed slightly. Lord, Mr. Moru from the Merchant Alliance has come to visit you. Moru was the goblin teller that Fang Hao was familiar with. Goblins look short and comical, but they are skilled in goblin technology and have good minds. In the Merchant Alliance, they often hold high positions. Moru was the goblin teller that Fang Hao knew. In the last battle, Moru was following behind the person in charge of the outpost, which also showed his different status. Hearing Duojin's words, Fang Hao immediately smiled and said enthusiastically, Mr. Moru, please come in quickly. Why didn't you notify me in advance before coming? Moru walked into the Lord's hall, bowed with a smile. Good morning, esteemed Lord Fang Hao. Before, Moru had always called Fang Hao the Undead Kid. But ever since he learned that Fang Hao had a dark gold-level hero as a bodyguard by his side, he didn't dare to casually address a powerful lord. Maintaining respect for the strong is a necessary condition for goblins to survive on this continent. Good morning, have a seat and chat. Fang Hao gestured for the other party to sit down. The short Moru sat down on a chair nearby, and the next second, he put away the smile on his face and directly stated his purpose. Mr. Fang Hao, I am here this time about the incident that occurred at the last auction. The Merchant Alliance has made a decision. Fang Hao had guessed Moru's intention. After all, 3 days had already passed, and with the Merchant Alliance's efficiency, there should be a result by now. Fang Hao nodded and asked, so what is the result? The Merchant Alliance is very sorry for such a terrible incident that happened at the outpost. Chiral has been removed from his commander position, and that flower fairy will both await further interrogation. At that time, Dream Forest should contact you proactively and try to get your forgiveness. Moru said clearly. Fang Hao did not suffer any losses from the last auction. Waiving the payment for the items he bid on and upgrading his shop to a gold member were the compensations made by the Merchant Alliance to Fang Hao. Today, Moru's main purpose was to inform Fang Hao of the Merchant Alliance's handling of Chiral and the fairy race. Fang Hao thought for a moment and felt that there was no need to be too serious with the Merchant Alliance, as he would still need to use this platform to sell goods in the future. Okay, I am very satisfied with the Merchant Alliance's handling. But I hope that the Merchant Alliance will not let these two people go until I receive news from Dream Forest. Fang Hao said, "You can rest assured about that. We are also angry about the fairy race's actions." Moru said solemnly, "That's good." Both of them achieved the results they wanted, and the atmosphere became much more relaxed afterwards. Fang Hao knew that the reason he was valued by the Merchant Alliance, received compensation after the problem occurred, and had someone personally sent to apologize. It wasn't because the Merchant Alliance was easy to talk to, but because of Lorana's identity as a dark gold level hero. If Lorana hadn't been there at the time, and Fang Hao had only brought Dimika and Anya, although he could have defeated Chiral, it would have been impossible to get the Merchant Alliance's free compensation and Moru's personal visit afterwards. In the end, all truth is based on strength. Fang Hao had the maid bring some fruit wine, and Moru also tasted it without being polite. "By the way, Mr. Moru, is Dream Forest the place where the fairy race lives?" Fang Hao asked during their casual chat. The fairy race is a relatively rare race. Since they have purple heroes and their units generally reach tier 7 and 8, they should also possess a certain level of strength. However, with the expansion of his territory, he had only seen the fairy race once or twice at the Merchant Alliance outpost. The fairy race's Dream Forest is indeed a very interesting place. Moru drank a glass of fruit wine and continued, "When I was young, I had the good fortune to visit Dream Forest once. There is a small bridge at the entrance. If you are a bad person, your footprints on the bridge will leave black footprints. And if you are a good person, your footprints will be blue. Isn't that very interesting?" "That is indeed very interesting." Fang Hao asked curiously again. "Then how do they distinguish between good people and bad people, by alignment or by faith?" "Haha, I don't know about that, but my footprints were blue when I stepped on it, and they treated me with great hospitality," Moru said after laughing heartily. "Forget it. You are from the Merchant Alliance. Even if your footprints were black, they wouldn't ask you to leave quickly," Fang Hao said. Moru was stunned, feeling that it was indeed true. But he still said, "But leaving blue footprints is a good thing, isn't it? Who wants to be a bad person?" "You are right." Fang Hao also took a sip of wine and continued to ask, "By the way, why does the fairy race need the heart of Asha so much, even willing to attack at the outpost to snatch it?" I don't know about this matter. The fairy race has declined very severely, and it is very common for them to need some items to save their race." Moru glanced at Fang Hao and said in a low voice. It seemed that there were some things that Moru was unwilling to reveal. After all, the Merchant Alliance had to remain neutral. Casually revealing information about various races would have a very bad impact. Moru was very talkative and didn't intend to leave immediately. Fang Hao also realized that Moru was also inquiring about his side's information. It seemed that the Merchant Alliance was also very interested in his suddenly rising power. The two chatted until noon, and Fang Hao invited Moru to stay for lunch. On the other side, Bloody Mountains, Mount Chaos. At the foot of the mountain, 3 million undead troops filled every inch of land as far as the eye could see at the foot of the mountain. In the camp of the undead army, 3 trolls were laid out on the ground, wearing animal skins and covered in totems. Beside them, Blackthorn was drawing array patterns. Soon, the array patterns were completed, and the necks of 3 livestock were cut open, and blood slowly flowed along the array patterns, finally gathering on the bodies. The next second, the bodies suddenly sat up. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Blackthorn asked, "You are dead. Now you must answer my questions truthfully." "Yes." The troll spoke stiffly. "How many trolls are on Mount Chaos?" The troll replied, "Less than 500. "Is Caius among the people?" "Yes." "How many people did he bring?" "Caius brought 200 guards." Bang! The next second, the body burst open like an inflated balloon. Blood and minced meat splashed everywhere. Immediately after, it was the second body. Blood flowed along the array patterns, and the body also sat up. Blackthorn continued to ask, "Besides Caius, are there any other heroes?" "No." "Are there really gods in Mount Chaos?" "The great god is sleeping and will punish everyone who disturbs his rest." "Have you seen this Holy Spirit?" "No." Bang! As soon as the words fell, the body exploded directly. The previous conversation made Blackthorn and others fall into thought. Corpses cannot lie, but they will output what is in their cognition, not necessarily the truth. If this person thought the grass was blue before he died, then what he tells you is that the color of the grass is blue. The troll corpse was very certain of the existence of the god, but had not seen it himself. This is very suspicious, and the army has already reached here. If the god really exists, he should have come out by now. Continue to interrogate the third body. After the third body sat up, Blackthorn asked directly, "Where is the god on Mount Chaos sleeping?" "In the temple on the holy mountain." "Has he come out?" Blackthorn continued to ask. "Not sure. Can he directly interfere with the war?" "The god will help his believers achieve final victory." Bang! The third person exploded again. All three bodies have been interrogated. The questions brought up, however, increased. Whoosh! At this moment, a bone dragon landed from the air. The orc scout jumped off the dragon's back and reported loudly, "Commander, an artificial structure has been found on the mountainside. The trolls have built defensive fortifications based on the structure." The structure on the mountainside was the trolls' temple in the air. In fact, it was more like a large cave built later. Blackthorn pondered for a moment and ordered in a deep voice, "Beat the war drums, prepare to attack, and end the battle before dark." "Yes, Commander." The heroes and orc messengers retreated after receiving the order, followed by the low sound of war drums. Layers of faint halos enveloped all the undead units. Regardless of whether the other party had a god or not, there was no turning back in this battle. If the other party truly had the strength to defeat his million-strong army, their retreat now would be futile. But if the god was just a pretense, just a rumor among the trolls, then they would end this battle before dark and unify the bloody mountains, and send the news of victory to the Lord. As the drumbeats became more urgent, the undead army began to move, slowly advancing towards Mount Chaos. Mount Chaos is steep, with stone steps in the middle. The trolls had covered it with a layer of special grease, making it feel like stepping on ice. It was difficult to climb the mountain using the stone steps. However, Blackthorn and others were already prepared. A million-strong army would naturally not take this small path and engage in a war of attrition with the enemy. When a flag was waved, a huge sound suddenly came from the foot of the mountain. Bang, 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 bang. Hundreds of dragon-binding ballistae shot bolts with rope nets into the mountain. Layer by layer, they hung on the mountain wall. From a distance, it looked like the mountain was wearing fishnet stockings. The undead soldiers bit their weapons with their teeth, and their limbs, like spiders, began to climb up along the rope nets. In the blink of an eye, the mountain wall was covered with skeletons. Facing the undead who started to climb up, the trolls were disheartened. Dense undead covered the entire mountain, and this unprecedented sense of oppression was suffocating. Even the trolls who had already resolved to die began to tremble in their hearts. Why on earth were there so many undead? Throw stones. With an order, all the trolls picked up the collected boulders and threw them downwards. Bang! The boulders rolled down the mountain, taking a vertical line of undead soldiers with them. Seeing that the effect was quite good, all the trolls began to work hard to carry and throw stones. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! Just when everyone was focusing on smashing the skeletons below, in the sky, there were sounds of whistling. Roar! Several bone dragons with shining silver armor on their bodies spat out black beams of light, pouring down on the troll ranks. The trolls, who were originally focused on throwing stones, had their bodies enveloped by the beams of light. The next second, their flesh and blood began to fall off, turning into white bones, rolling down the mountain. In an instant, dozens of people died, further reducing the already small number. Nearly 100 bone dragons began to circle around the mountain. Undead continuously jumped off the backs of the bone dragons, landing directly on the platform in front of the stone cave, and began to fight with the trolls. Caius stood alone on the platform on the right, holding a huge ballista bolt that he had pulled out of the mountain. With a backhand, he threw it towards the bone dragon in front of him. Screech. The bolt pierced through the metal armor on the bone dragon's chest, emitting a noise of steel being squeezed and deformed. The bolt was embedded between the bone dragon's ribs, but it didn't cause any damage. Instead, the dragon breath spat out in front of him caused Caius's body to rot and wrinkle. Although his flesh and blood didn't fall off like others, he was still greatly affected. Caius threw out iron axes one after another, but they were easily dodged by the bone dragon, which then flew away directly. Although he was an orange combat-type hero, even Tier 10 units were not his match. But facing these highly mobile bone dragons in the air, he had no good solution. The bolts he threw out also caused some damage. Except for the first strike, the bone dragons would deliberately avoid the remaining attacks. It was difficult to hit the target. But the bone dragon's death breath could continuously breathe, attacking the area below. This was the gap between races. Seeing that there was no good solution, Caius had no choice but to order everyone to hide in the cave. The trolls let out low roars. They pushed down all the stone walls they were hiding behind. Shattered stones and rolling logs smashed down the mountain in large quantities. And the trolls, after pushing down the cover, all retreated to the depths of the cave, watching the bone dragons circling outside the cave, trying to spit dragon breath into the cave. The undead army continued to climb up fearlessly. Soon, undead soldiers climbed to the mountainside. They picked up the weapons they were biting in their mouths and began to attack the cave. There was no fixed order and no formation. They just rushed into the cave like madmen. Boom. Inside the cave, the undead were met by trolls fighting to the death. The skeleton warriors who had just rushed in. Before they could swing the iron swords in their hands, their heads were cut off by the trolls and kicked out of the cave. But behind them, there was still an endless stream of white bone warriors pouring in. In the blink of an eye, the only passage in front was already filled with white bone armies. Move aside. Caius let out a low roar. The muscles on his right arm began to bulge, and the veins on his arm kept twitching. It was full of explosive power. The next second, he suddenly threw a punch. Boom. With a roar, a strong wave of air exploded in a fan shape. A vacuum instantly appeared in front of him, and the white bone undead were instantly black. But immediately after, the empty space in front was filled with undead again. Fearlessly, they continued to attack. Damn it! Caius cursed angrily. Punching out one after another, repelling the approaching undead, Caius continuously swung his fists, each strike unleashing bursts of energy. The skeleton warriors caught in the blast were instantly shattered. But each time a batch of undead was cleared, the cave was immediately refilled. Undead poured into the cave without pause, launching fearless attacks against the trolls. Although called a cave, it was artificially excavated, with a large distance between the stone walls on either side. It was more like a wide passage. Caius was ferociously unstoppable, but the ordinary trolls on either side didn't possess his strength. Soon, the defending trolls on both sides began to suffer casualties. Their formation was broken. Like a floodgate opening, the skeleton warriors directly squeezed into the trolls' ranks and began a more intense close-quarters battle. People of the lightning serpent, what are you still waiting for? Caius roared loudly towards the rear. As Caius's words fell, the totems on the trolls at the back of the formation began to emit a faint blue light. Like flashing lightning serpents, they flickered around their bodies. These were the guards of the troll temple, the lightning serpent tribe. Trolls had strong bodies, but lacked the ability to control elements. However, the lightning serpent tribe broke this barrier, sealing the power of the gods within themselves through belief totems, thereby gaining temporary strength and the ability to control lightning. After the people of the lightning serpent tribe activated their totems, besides the lightning flashing around their bodies, their muscles also began to rapidly swell, filled with explosive power. Caius, fall back. We can only last for 15 seconds. The people of the lightning serpent tribe shouted loudly. Immediately after, they charged directly to the front and engaged in battle with the undead. Bang! A leading lightning serpent troll punched the shield of a skeleton warrior. Arcs of electricity flashed on the shield. A huge force erupted, directly sending the skeleton warrior flying, where it instantly scattered into a pile of white bones upon hitting the ground. The same scene occurred in every corner of the cave. The trolls surrounded by electric arcs saw a significant increase in both strength and speed. Furthermore, the lightning effect would chain and jump, killing several skeletons simultaneously. Throughout the cave, white bones piled up like small mountains, and blood stained the ground red. Unfortunately, the totem buff of the lightning serpent tribe could only last for 15 seconds at a time. When the lightning effect disappeared, they were instantly overwhelmed by the undead army. No need for follow-up blows. They were already trampled into meat paste. 2 hours passed. Huff, huff. Caius was breathing heavily. In the entire cave, he was the only survivor remaining. Around him, centered on his position, lay piles of white bones and weapons. Likewise, Caius's injuries were also severe. His armor was already tattered and broken, and his entire body looked as if it had been soaked in blood, turning him into a bloody figure. If he hadn't possessed the strength of an orange hero and the robust body of a troll, he would likely have died long ago in the siege of the undead. I know you're outside. How about we talk? Caius repelled the attacking undead and shouted loudly towards outside the cave. The undead's planned attack, with coordination between air and ground. There must be a commander. Indeed, after the message was sent out, a low, hoarse voice came from outside the cave. Chief Caius, things have come to this. Do you still have something to say? Outside the cave, Blackthorn responded, but the attacking undead did not stop at all, still continuously pressing their assault on Caius. Can I meet your leader? Perhaps we can change the current situation. Force is never the only way to solve problems, Caius said while swinging his fists. It's truly strange to hear those words from the mouth of a troll, Blackthorn said. Caius ignored the sarcasm in the other party's tone and continued. How about it? Let me meet your leader. Perhaps we can end this war. Blackthorn naturally understood the meaning behind Caius's words. No one wanted to die. This was an attempt to surrender and compromise with their side. But the Bloodthroat tribe was gone, and most of the trolls in the entire Bloody Mountains had been slaughtered. How could such hatred be easily erased? Moreover, Caius indeed possessed very powerful strength, not to mention daring to let him meet Fang Hao. Even their few heroes didn't dare to face Caius directly, but instead planned to wear him down and kill him using a human wave tactic. He was very clear about this in his heart. Without much hesitation, Blackthorn replied, If Chief Caius has anything to say, he can tell me. I am currently in full charge of matters in the Bloody Mountains. You? Caius's heart sank immediately. Unable to negotiate with the other party's leader, his bargaining chips would be greatly reduced. But his injuries no longer allowed him to drag on. Looking at the endless stream of undead surging in, he gritted his teeth and said, Don't kill me. I am an orange hero. As long as you bring me before your leader, you will have made a contribution. His identity as an orange hero was his only bargaining chip to survive. On this continent, orange heroes were individuals that all forces competed to recruit. No leader would ignore an orange hero who sought refuge. Unfortunately, what he received was not the answer he expected. Lord is busy with affairs and likely doesn't have time to receive Chief Caius. As soon as Blackthorn's words fell, the types of troops surging into the cave changed, from a continuous stream of skeleton warriors to skeleton trolls holding massive shields. Caius's punches struck the shields. A huge sound like drumming echoed. The hit skeleton trolls flew backward. But there was no situation of large numbers of troops dying. Clang, clang. The troll shield formation quickly spread out. Solid and heavy shields surrounded Caius in the center. Sharp, long spears extended from the gaps in the shields, stabbing towards Caius in the middle from all directions. Caius frantically swung his fists, but his stamina and strength were continuously declining with time, and the blood loss made his vision begin to blur. He knew he couldn't last much longer. What exactly do you want? I am the greatest warrior of the trolls, a powerful orange hero, who will bring you great benefits. What good does it do you to kill me? You gain nothing by killing me. Caius roared loudly. His voice drowned out the sound of his fists hitting the shields, transmitting outwards within the cave. But the tone from outside the cave remained calm. No, a corpse is more valuable than you are now. You? What exactly do you want? Caius roared. Blackthorn said, All right, Chief Caius's last words are a bit long. Welcome to the undying undead. As Blackthorn's words fell, the encirclement around Caius quickly shrank. Spear after spear pierced into Caius's body. Blood stained the ground red, and Caius knelt weakly on the ground. A sharp battle axe struck his neck. Gurgle. His head, eyes wide with rage, fell off and rolled to the side. As the battle ended, peace returned to the cave. The undead soldiers who had fought without regard for their lives stood like statues in place, awaiting the next command. In the wide passage of the cave, the white bones of the undead covered the entire ground, mixed with the severed limbs of trolls. Stepping in here felt like entering hell. Blackthorn gave the order to begin cleaning the battlefield. The 2-meter-thick layer of white bones on the ground was to be completely cleared, and the bodies of the trolls and the bones of the undead were to be handled separately. As the undead soldiers cleaned the battlefield, Blackthorn came before the dead Caius. This greatest warrior of the trolls still maintained a kneeling posture in death, only his head had rolled to the side. Bending down, he picked up the head, and his skeletal fingers closed the open eyes. Bolton, Blackthorn called out. At the back of the formation, Bolton, the pig-headed man in iron armor, quickly walked up, bowed, and saluted. Lord Commander, please give your orders. Caius's body is to be guarded by you alone. After everything is finished, send it along with the other spoils of war to Lord, Blackthorn ordered. Yes, sir, Bolton replied. He beckoned a few orcs from behind, who carried Caius's body, along with his head, outside. After the cave was mostly cleaned up, Blackthorn led the group further into the depths of the cave. Although called a cave, in the trolls' language, it was the passage leading to the temple. However, the trolls' way of life was relatively primitive. They didn't build structures like palaces as humans did. As the group continued to go deeper, various patterns and hunting and battle scenes, drawn with white lime, began to appear on the stone walls. Among them, the sun and lightning were the main symbols in the patterns. In one scene depicting the hunting of a giant, bloated monster, someone summoned lightning from the sky, helping the trolls defeat this monster. Furthermore, some of the trolls began to worship the lightning. After going deeper for about 2 to 3 minutes, they still didn't find any remaining trolls. But at the end of the cave, there was a huge bronze door. Perhaps the trolls' casting technology was not perfect. Although patterns were carved on the bronze door, the workmanship was somewhat blurry. It was difficult to accurately identify the patterns on it. Sir, it seems we need a key to open this door. Great Wall pushed hard, but the bronze door remained motionless. In the middle of the door, a keyhole could be seen. It was confirmed that a key was needed to open this bronze door. Arrange for people to search all the troll bodies. The key must be on them, Blackthorn ordered. The bodies of the trolls and the bones of the undead had already been separated. Searching was also very easy. Soon, an orc excitedly walked in, holding a bronze key, and presented it to Blackthorn. Sir, we found it. Good. Open it, he had already said. The key was inserted into the keyhole, and with the combined effort of the skeleton trolls pushing, the large bronze door slowly opened. The scene inside simultaneously appeared before everyone. This was a room about 200 square meters in size. Several luminous stone chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the walls around were covered with strange, ancient runes. Directly in front of the entrance was an ancient altar. In the center of the altar was a stone platform about the height of a person, and on the platform lay a chunk of meat as large as an adult bear. The chunk of meat was pulsating up and down, as if it still possessed life. On the stone platform below the meat chunk, there was a groove, seemingly for collecting the meat chunk's blood. Great Wall, do you know what this is? Blackthorn asked Great Wall, who was beside him. Everyone simultaneously looked at Great Wall, hoping he could provide a definitive answer. But in the end, Great Wall also shook his head slightly. I don't know what this is either. Without a definite answer, Blackthorn also nodded slightly and did not continue to delve into the matter. Blackthorn arranged for the stone room to be searched. Carefully avoiding the altar and the meat chunk in the center, they found a silver treasure chest and a single-page map recording special locations in the secret room. As for the chandeliers on the ceiling and the wall lamps, no one touched them. After reporting the situation here, they might come a second time. All right, close the bronze door. Let's leave here, Blackthorn ordered again. The heavy bronze door closed once more. Blackthorn arranged for personnel to stay behind, and the main group began to return to Town North City. Inside the main city. After dinner, Fang Hao stood before his lord's mansion, watching the maids playing and frolicking. He had stayed within his territory all day today. Moru had stayed with him until 3 o'clock in the afternoon before leaving. If it weren't for the need to report the results to the Trade Alliance, he probably would have stayed to eat dinner with him. At the same time, he also learned a lot of information he was curious about from Moru. Just as he was about to go back to his room to rest, he saw Nelson walking over, followed by 2 skeleton warriors, who were jointly carrying a skeleton with crystal-clear bones. "Good evening, Lord." Seeing Nelson appear, Fang Hao also smiled. "Good evening, Scholar Nelson." Nelson didn't waste words and continued. "Sir, this is the demon puppet I made according to the method in the notes. I need to explain the specific operation method to you." Fang Hao glanced at the skeleton beside him. Most of the skeleton was still translucent, like jade. But the bone structure of the right arm was significantly thicker, and the color was somewhat yellowish. The most distinctive feature was the pair of huge bat wings on its back. These bat wings originally belonged to the Red Duke. After he was killed by Rolana, Fang Hao had someone find and bring them back. This time, Nelson directly transplanted them onto this body. It looked a bit mismatched, but if it could fly, it would be quite good. "Tell me about it," Fang Hao said. Nelson then proceeded to explain the methods for controlling the demon puppet to Fang Hao. There were 2 methods. One was thread control. This could be understood as a puppeteer, but there were countless threads connecting the puppet and oneself. Furthermore, it greatly tested one's coordination ability and required long-term practice. Without several years of effort, it would be difficult to control the puppet normally. The second method was the Undead's Divine Presence. Divine Presence was a very powerful ability of the Undead race. Some even believed that this skill was very similar to the Divine Descent ability of gods upon their followers. Nelson would engrave a special rune on the puppet's skull. This would allow Fang Hao to control the puppet through Divine Presence, achieving the effect of controlling both himself and the puppet simultaneously. This method would consume mental energy exponentially, but the advantage was that it could be used immediately. Then let's use the second method. My fingers have been clumsy since I was a child. Nielsen showed no surprise at Fang Hao's choice. The demon notebook only recorded the manipulation methods of puppetry. However, controlling the puppet through divine descent was an additional feature that Nielsen added specifically for Fang Hao's ability. Nielsen is a support-type hero. The orange hero rating is not because he possesses powerful combat abilities. Rather, it is due to the vast knowledge and insights he has accumulated over endless years. As the number of high-level heroes in the territory increased, high-level heroes also joined one after another. Only Nielsen's position remained unshakable. In the territory, besides Fang Hao, Nielsen was the most respected. "My lord, this set of runes is somewhat similar to the giant spirit totem on your back. You need to drip a drop of blood in the center of the rune," Nielsen said. At the center of the puppet's brow was a small, circular rune. The rune connected all the runes on the puppet's body. Fang Hao didn't hesitate. He took out the light feather-short sword from his waist and gently touched the tip of his index finger. A drop of blood was dripped onto the center of the puppet's brow. The next second, the blood flowed quickly along the rune and was absorbed, disappearing without a trace. However, Fang Hao could clearly feel the difference. It was like the feeling after he had just tattooed the giant spirit god. He could clearly feel a connection between himself and the puppet, as if a new skill had been added to his skill bar. He tried to cast Divine Descent on the puppet. Immediately, the puppet's body, carried by 2 skeleton warriors, trembled violently. It broke free from its restraints and stood up. On Fang Hao's side, a perspective from the puppet's point of view also appeared in his mind. He could even see himself through the puppet's eyes. Observing himself in this way was even more realistic than looking in a mirror. He continued to try walking forward, raising his arms, and flapping the bat wings on his back. The puppet slowly flew up and circled in the air. Previously, Fang Hao had controlled the skeleton giant bat and flew in the air. Although the experience was average, it laid a good foundation for controlling the puppet to fly this time. Soon, he became familiar with the flying skills and could smoothly complete actions such as emergency stops in the air and traversing obstacles. "Lord, how does it feel?" Nielsen asked. "Not bad," Fang Hao replied, taking a step forward, but felt his foot go empty and almost fell. He was not yet familiar with this kind of multitasking, controlling both himself and the puppet at the same time. When his attention was focused on the puppet, he would neglect his own actions. Just like just now, he stumbled and almost fell. But the problem wasn't too big. He could adapt to this control method through familiarity and practice, and there wouldn't be many opportunities to use the puppet and himself at the same time. This was much easier than spending several years practicing puppetry. It's good to be familiar with it. This puppet still has its own unique features. In the future, you can replace it with more advanced limbs, Nielsen continued. Fang Hao nodded, indicating that he understood. This method of gaining power by piecing together a corpse was indeed rare, but it had to be said that it was very simple and easy to use. "Okay, I understand," Fang Hao replied. He controlled the puppet to land beside him. He began to check its attributes. Demon puppet. Category, puppet. Body strength, level 5 strength. Abilities, light scholar, chosen of light, purifying aura, healing, blade of judgment, full power throw, flight, demon gate. Light scholar, reduces mana consumption by 20% when using light magic. Chosen of light, increases attack and defense by 2% when using light-based positive status magic. Purifying aura, increases defense by 5%, can be actively released to dispel negative statuses from target units. Healing, heals friendly living units, deals damage to undead, demons, and dark creatures. Blade of Judgment, increases own attack power by 20%. Full power throw, increases throwing weapon damage by 10%, increases throwing distance by 20%. Flight, this unit can fly freely in the air. Demon Gate, summons a portal lasting 5 seconds, which can be used to cross areas. Description, who can refuse a toy that can accompany you and has many abilities? Seeing the puppet's attributes, Fang Hao already showed a surprised expression. A tool that was made actually possessed skills that were no less than those of a hero. The strength of the body even reached level 5. You should know that the blue plate armor only reached level 3 in defense, and the set would reach level 4 in defense. Level 5 was already comparable to a piece of purple armor. And Light Scholar and Chosen of Light were obviously attributes of the church. It can improve the effect of light-based skills. Purifying aura has the effect of dispelling negative attributes. Healing can heal injuries, and can also be used as an attack skill, dealing damage to dark and undead creatures. And Blade of Judgment is its own attack power, making it able to both attack and heal. With this puppet, he wouldn't be afraid of getting hurt in the future. The subsequent full power throw is a skill attached to the orc's right arm, which improves throwing ability. Flight is the bat wings, and the most surprising thing is the skill Demon Gate. Through these few understandings, demons have a high level of attainment in space technology. The demon space in the Lord's Book, which can store items, is also a storage space made using space technology. The Demon Gate is a more advanced technology. Thinking of the demon space for storing items, Fang Hao immediately thought of another question. Can this demon puppet be put into the demon space? You should know that the demon space cannot store living bodies and soldiers. In some senses, the demon puppet may not belong to either of these two types. If it could be stored in the demon space, then he could carry it with him, adding a new life-saving trump card. Thinking of this, he immediately tried. With a thought, the puppet in front of him disappeared instantly, and the next second it was already stored in the storage space. Sure enough, it could be put in. In this way, he could carry it with him. Even if he went to a human city, he wouldn't have to have a skeleton following him all the time. In the storage space of the Lord's Book, he selected the puppet and summoned the demon puppet again, standing in front of Fang Hao. My lord, this still needs more practice, and you will become more and more proficient in the future. Nielsen sat aside, silently watching Fang Hao familiarize himself with the puppet. This is much simpler than puppetry, Fang Hao said with a smile. Yes, my lord, practice. If there is nothing else, I will go back first. Nielsen got up and was about to return to the Museum of Internal Organs. Fang Hao hurriedly called out to him, Wait a minute. My lord, is there anything else? I'll upgrade the Museum of Internal Organs first, Fang Hao said. The Lord's Manor was upgraded to a stone fortress, and the Organ Museum also met the upgrade conditions. After putting away the puppet, the two went directly to the Organ Museum. Organ Museum, wood 25,000, stone 20,000, stone bricks 12,000, hemp rope 8,500, leather 1,600, shadow stone 20, traces of death 15. The materials consumed were quite a lot, but still sufficient. Directly select upgrade. Light enveloped the building, expanding it. Half an hour later, the entire building upgrade was completed. The Organ Museum occupied an even wider area, and the original single-story building also gained a second story. The all-stone building was full of patterns and reliefs related to the undead. Organ Museum. Category: Special Building. Organs stored in jars. Resurrection lightning hand speed slaughter attainment. Can recruit: Funeral Priest. Funeral Priest. Wriggling Spine 1. Traces of Death 1. Note: placing organ jars storing various energies within it can grant the troops powerful abilities and create special weapons. Materials required for upgrade: hard tough wood 8,000, stone bricks 7,500, finely crafted stone bricks 2,000, cast iron blocks 200, refined iron 100, metal parts 1,200, mithril 50, shadow stone 50, traces of death 30. After the Organ Museum was upgraded, the new feature was the ability to recruit funeral priests. Judging by the name, they should be talents from the funeral industry. Fang Hao directly recruited them. Hundredfold increase triggered, recruited 101 funeral priests. In an instant, 101 skull priests wearing long robes reappeared in front of Fang Hao and Nelson. After looking around, they all focused on Fang Hao, stepped forward quickly, and said respectfully, Greetings, Lord. They also possessed intelligence. Fang Hao nodded. Welcome to join us. From today onwards, you will listen to Scholar Nelson's dispatch and arrangement. Yes, Lord. The funeral priests looked at Nelson again and continued to salute. Scholar Nelson. Well, I need some preservatives. Go prepare some. Nelson didn't stand on ceremony and directly commanded. Yes, Scholar. The funeral team immediately dispersed and began to work. Fang Hao watched the dispersing funeral team and continued to ask, Are these people enough? Do you want to recruit more? Nelson shook his head. Not for now. It's not too late to recruit more when we need them. Oh, okay. Nelson left, and Fang Hao continued to control the puppet. He put clothes and equipment on the puppet and put on the wooden mask on its face. Except for the empty arms and legs without muscles, it couldn't be seen as a skeleton puppet. After practicing for 2 consecutive hours, late at night, Fang Hao felt a little dizzy due to the consumption of mental power. He put away the puppet and went back to his room to sleep. The next day, early in the morning, Fang Hao woke up from his sleep and received good news from Blackthorn. The entire Bloodied Mountains had been completely occupied. Those surrendered trolls, under the arrangement of the female troll Stella, began to settle in Jinbei City. In the past few days, they had begun to gradually resume production and return to normal life. This was considered good news, as there was no need to worry about the danger to the north of the territory from now on. Moreover, the Bloodied Mountains contained a large number of mineral veins, which could also be mined for more basic materials. After listening to Blackthorn's news, he directly rolled over and sat up from the bed. After breakfast, at 8 a.m., Bolton rode a bone dragon and landed in front of the Lord's Manor. Seeing Fang Hao sunbathing, he jumped directly from the dragon's back. Lord, Bolton said with a salute. Fang Hao sat up. Yes. Bolton continued. Lord, the battle in the Bloodied Highlands has been won. Commander Blackthorn ordered me to bring back Caius's body and the spoils of war first. As he spoke, All the items on the dragon's back were unloaded. In addition to the dismembered Caius, there was also a silver treasure chest and a large amount of gold and silver currency that had been looted. These were all spoils of war looted by Blackthorn, and he asked Bolton to bring them to Fang Hao. Okay, well done, Fang Hao nodded, and then ordered to a maid on the side. Go and call Scholar Nelson and tell him that there are new hero corpses here that need to be processed. The maid responded and left quickly, while Fang Hao went directly to the silver treasure chest. He opened the treasure chest directly. Obtained. Curse Lightning Totem Scroll, blue. Iron Gauntlet Blueprint, blue. Troll Stone 12. War Coins 76th. Curse Lightning Totem. Category, Scroll. Description, records the drawing method of the Curse Lightning Totem. This was the second time Fang Hao had seen a totem scroll. He already had the giant spirit body totem tattoo on his body. Moreover, it showed a high combat ability in battle. It's just that the giant spirit body was a purple scroll, and the reward in front of him was blue, which was much lower in level. The second blueprint was called Iron Gauntlet. Iron Gauntlet. Iron 3, Cast Iron Block 2, Leather 3. Description. Iron gauntlets commonly used by people who are good at close combat. Only Anjia in the territory was good at unarmed combat. But Anjia's own tiger fingers were also blue quality. This green one was obviously useless. Fang Hao had always wanted to replace her with a better weapon, but tiger fingers and gauntlets were unpopular weapons here. There were very few for sale, and few blacksmiths were willing to forge them. He stored the blueprint and directly put away the scroll. Lord, there is also this map that was found in the temple of Mount Caius. Moreover, altars and wriggling flesh were also found in the temple. Commander Blackthorn said that the flesh might be an organ and said to wait for you to come and see it when you have time. Bolton said, and handed over a single-page map. Map, Thunder Temple. Category, single-page map. Description, a map recording the target location. After storing it with the Lord's Book, the marked location on the map could be seen. Looking at it this way, it was discovered that this location had been recorded before. It was the barren battlefield map that Dong Jieyue gave him. And the Thunder Temple was a location in the barren battlefield. This was really a coincidence. Just as Fang Hao was checking the blueprint, Nelson walked over with 6 funeral priests. Lord, Nelson and the others saluted Fang Hao. Yes, you guys take this corpse away first, and then Nelson will go to the bloodied mountains with me later. There may be biological organs that can be sealed there. Fang Hao nodded and said, Okay, Lord, Nelson replied. Then he asked the funeral priest behind him to carry Caius's body to the organ museum.